Chapter 770. The next day, the Lu tribesmen still hadn't finished counting the animals in their animal pens, so Bai Xing went to look for Xueqi. "We've decided to merge our fire seed, and after that, we'll be moving to the Flaming River. We hope that Elder Xueqi and the rest of you can help us on this journey." Bai Xing didn't sleep the entire night, so he didn't look well. However, his eyes were bright and he sounded relaxed as he spoke. They finally made a decision on such a huge matter. Xueqi looked at the new chief of the Lu tribe. He didn't mind when the reared beasts would be given to him. If the Lu tribe decided to move to the Flaming River region, they wouldn't have to give him the reared beasts now. After everything had settled down and the reared beasts had recovered, it wouldn't be too late to send them to the Flaming Horns. However, Xueqi still had a question. "Where have you decided to move to?" "The Flaming River region isn't small," Xueqi asked. "Well, we've already decided on the location a long time ago," Bai Xing smiled. "The chief brought us there during the Flaming River Trading Point's grand banquet." The chief Bai Xing was referring to was the previous chief who had passed away. Although that chief wasn't the strongest in the tribe, he was smart and had foresight. When he was invited to the Flaming River Trading Point, he brought a few warriors to explore the area. He even drew a map and made markings on it. The Lu tribe's water source was almost depleted. Although they could still survive, a lack of water severely affected the quality of their animals. Back then, when the previous chief went to the Flaming River Trading Point, he had already considered moving there. After he came back, he went to a few other places and listed them as options. Now, Bai Xing had chosen the Flaming River Trading Point. Xueqi looked at the animal skin scroll Bai Xing took out. On it was a map of the Flaming River Trading Point with a few simple strokes. It marked out the Flaming River Trading Point's location, the Rain Tribe, Drumming Tribe and other tribes. The place the Lu tribesmen chose was upstream of the Rain Tribe. It wasn't too close to the Flaming River, but it wasn't too far either. Most importantly, there was a small river that led to the Flaming River. Xueqi knew this river because he had walked upstream. This river must have appeared during the disaster and didn't exist before. It was only about 10 meters wide and less than 20 meters wide, but it was enough for the Lu tribesmen. Plus, it was connected to the Flaming River, so it wouldn't dry up easily. Even if they ran out of water, they could walk further to the Flaming River to get more water. Even worse, if there was a bigger problem, they could choose to move. After merging their fire seed, they wouldn't have to worry about it. "When are you merging?" asked Xueqi. "Tomorrow, the day after tomorrow at the latest," said Bai Xing. The Lu shaman asked Xueqi for advice about merging their fire seed. Although they had gained a lot of experience from merging their fire seed, they still had to be careful when it came to their fire seed. In the end, the Lu tribe chose to merge their fire seed on the afternoon of the third day after clearing the forest. They didn't dare to do it at night because the animals in their animal pens would be frightened. They were braver during the day, so they were safer. Dien Fa had already left with the 1,000 Masks tribe the day before. No one knew what they were planning in the future. Perhaps they would imitate the slave masters on the other side of the sea, and merge with other smaller tribes to form their own political system. No matter what, they had to go through a bloody and cruel cleansing process. After all, the situation there wasn't like the Flaming River region. The 1,000 Masks tribe was surrounded by tribes that had once established themselves in the central region. Every tribe had their own ambitions. If they weren't careful, the 1,000 Masks tribe could be bitten back. Back in the day, the Ji family in the royal city fought with a few other tribes for the top position. It was also a bloodbath. However, that was the 1,000 Masks tribe's business. Xueqi didn't think about it anymore. He stood with the other Yanjiao tribesmen outside the Lu tribe's boundary. During the merging process, the Lu tribe's fire seed energy would affect the Yanjiao tribesmen. The conflict between different fire seeds would bring pressure. This was the Lu tribe's territory. During the merging process, the fire seed energy would be released completely. The Yanjiao tribesmen didn't want to get hurt. The aura of the Lu tribe's fire seed was getting stronger and stronger. The people standing outside the walls could clearly feel the pressure from the foreign tribe's fire seed. It was rare for Gan Xie to experience something like this, so he looked at the Lu tribe curiously. "Is this the merging process?" "It's just part of the process. We need to ignite the fire seed in the fire pit. This is just the beginning. The fire seed energy will get stronger and stronger," Xueqi explained. Gan Xie had a familiar feeling. It wasn't the Lu tribe's fire seed energy, but the process of merging with the fire seed. Although he wasn't a Lu tribesman, He could feel the current state of the Lu tribe's fire seed. It was very similar to the scene in his memory. Back then, they encountered a similar situation. Unfortunately, after the fire seed was ignited, the shaman limited it to only 10 of them. Including the shaman, there were 11 people in total. 11 people merged with the fire seed of the entire Han tribe. If it wasn't for the fact that the fire seed was weakened during the battle, the 11 of them would have died on the spot. Back then, the shaman of the Han tribe didn't expect that to happen either. When he realized that things were out of control, he couldn't do anything about it. He couldn't do anything about it and could only let it happen. Even now, no one could recreate what happened to the Han tribe. It was just an accident that no one knew about. Even if the shaman of the Han tribe was still alive, he couldn't recreate it. When the khaki-colored fire seed flames shot up into the sky, the energy of the fire seed reached its peak. The majestic energy brought great pressure to the Yanjiao people standing outside. The Lu tribe was like the eye of a storm, with strong winds blowing outwards. Guangyi couldn't help but take a few steps back. He wanted to get as far away from the fire seed as possible. When he looked up, he saw Xueqi standing there calmly as if nothing had happened. He thought for a moment, then took a step back and stood behind Xueqi. Instantly, he felt the pressure lessen. It was as if the impact of the Lu tribe's fire seed was blocked by Xueqi. When the others saw Guangyi doing this, they followed suit. 1, 2, 10, 100. When Xueqi looked behind him, the scattered Yanjiao people had formed a triangular formation. Xueqi was at the front of the triangle facing the Lu tribe. Gongqie didn't stand behind Xueqi like the others. Although he was also affected by the Lu tribe's fire seed, this feeling was hard to describe. If it was a normal person, they would definitely say that it was like they couldn't breathe. Gongqie didn't need to breathe anymore, but this feeling was similar. However, while the Yanjiao people wanted him to relax, Gongqie didn't want to. He wanted to experience the changes more clearly because all of this matched up with the scenes in his memory. It really is fusion. Gongqie closed his eyes. Back then, the shaman of the Han tribe almost let his injuries worsen. It was equivalent to suicide. If they had known this would happen, perhaps the shamaness wouldn't have blamed herself so much. No, she still blamed herself. After all, it was the shamaness who turned the tribe's fire seed into such a state. Moreover, she only merged it into 11 people's bodies. The rest of the Han tribesmen were no different from the wanderers who had no totemic power. No matter what, it was all in the past. What happened couldn't be undone. There was no point in regretting it. When everything calmed down, the Lu tribe's fire seed's aura gradually dissipated. The Yanjiao people also felt the pressure on their bodies disappear. It's done. The Lu tribesmen had successfully merged their fire seed. Every tribe that succeeded in merging their fire seed would have some time to adjust their mentality. Everyone had different thoughts. After all, from now on, they were no longer the Lu tribe of the past. If they encountered danger, they wouldn't be able to avoid it by hiding in the tribe. They wouldn't have the fire seed to protect them anymore. However, Xueqi and the others wouldn't give the Lu tribe too much time to adjust. They couldn't just sit here and wait for the Lu tribe to adapt to this change. The Lu tribe still had to migrate. If they wanted to travel with the Yanjiao people, they had to hurry up and prepare. The animals in the animal pens were counted and assigned to different people. When the time came, there would be people to watch the animals along the way to prevent them from leaving the herd. Fortunately, after generations of domestication, the animals had become much more docile. They weren't as wild as the wild beasts in the forest. There were even some animals like cows and horses that were used to pull carts. When the time came, as long as they took good care of them, they would be able to manage the herd. The animals in the Lu tribe were all social animals. Wherever the herd went, they would follow. The Lu tribe was busy for 3 days. The Yanjiao people also helped them build carts. The people who hadn't awakened their totemic power and the injured were arranged to sit on the wooden carts. When everything was ready, the Lu tribesmen set a fire and burned down all the houses in the tribe. The houses and other tools that they couldn't take away were gone. Without the ancient fire seed, as soon as they left, someone would come and take it. They wouldn't leave it to those who were still watching in the dark. Since they couldn't take it away, they might as well destroy it. When everything was destroyed in the fire, the Lu tribe drove the herd away and began to migrate. There were people sitting on the stupid birds in front of the herd. Sometimes, some injured Yanjiao warriors would ride on them. Because these birds were too stupid, They wouldn't think of anything else when they saw food. So, if you wanted these stupid birds to follow you, you just had to use food to keep them. Thus, such a scene was often seen on the road. A clumsy bird was striding with its 2 big feet, and the person riding on it was holding a long pole, with a piece of wild fruit tied to the other end of the pole, hanging in front of them. The cows and other herds of animals were also divided into several groups. There were people riding horses and cows around the herds. They ran back and forth, chasing the animals that strayed away from the herd back to the herd. When other tribes migrated, there were only people. However, when the Lu tribe migrated, it was even bigger. The running hooves of the animals kicked up clouds of dust. It was fine in places with a lot of grass, but in places with sparse vegetation and people walking around, the clouds of dust were so thick that people couldn't even see them clearly. The Lu tribe's migration route was different from the Yanjiao's. Sometimes, they would take longer detours for safety reasons. Xueqi sent letters to the major tribes in the central region in advance, telling them to take care of their subordinates. This gave the major tribes a headache, especially the Thousand Masks tribe. When they saw Xueqi's letter, Dianfa cursed the Yanjiao ancestors in his heart. The Lu tribe chose to follow the Yanjiao and the Thousand Masks tribe couldn't stop them. But now, the Lu tribe's migration team might be attacked by other tribes. What did this have to do with the Thousand Masks tribe? Even if some of the other tribes relied on the Thousand Masks tribe, that was their own decision. Why should the Thousand Masks tribe stop them? Dianfa had hoped that the Lu tribe would encounter more trouble during their migration. That way, they would regret following the Yanjiao. But now, the letter said that if any of the Thousand Masks tribe's subordinates attacked the migration team, the Thousand Masks tribe would be held responsible. How unreasonable! However, because of the merging of the Fire Seed, the Thousand Masks tribe had signed a treaty with the Flaming Horn tribe at the Flaming River trading point. Now that Xueqi mentioned this in his letter, even if the Thousand Masks tribe was unhappy, they had to endure it. The chief of the Thousand Masks tribe closed his eyes and didn't speak. In the end, he took a deep breath and said in a low voice, "Tell the other tribes not to attack the Lu tribe's migration team. If anyone dares to attack them, they will be kicked out of Thousand Masks territory." If the Yanjiao people made the Thousand Masks tribe suffer, the Thousand Masks tribe could only vent their anger on others. Dianfa's lips moved. No one knew what he was saying, but he still turned around and followed the chief's orders to pass the message to the Thousand Masks tribe subordinates. Not only the Thousand Masks tribe, but other tribes, such as the Mang tribe and the Eight Limbs tribe, also warned their subordinates after receiving Xueqi's letter. Therefore, although the migration team of the Lu tribe also encountered some trouble, it was not much. At least, it was less than they expected. At first, Yanjiao thought it was strange. Why did the people they met along the way not come over to snatch the beasts when they saw them? During their break, he chatted with the Yanjiao people and found out that Xueqi had sent letters to the other tribes. The elders of the Lu tribe who were against following the Yanjiao people were shocked when they heard about this. They didn't expect things to turn out this way. After all, these tribes were all big tribes in the central region. How could they restrict the movements of other tribes just because of Xueqi's letter? Gongqie ran at a constant speed. Some of the Lu tribesmen told him to rest on the back of a dumb bird if he was tired, but the moment Gongqie got on the back of a bird, the dumb birds would crouch down and curl up into a ball. They wouldn't run away unless Gongqie left. They were afraid. Gongqie didn't mind. He didn't get tired easily. As he ran, Gongqie, who was wearing a new cloak, suddenly raised his head and looked in a certain direction. His expressionless face twitched. Chapter 771. After the Lu tribe's migration team left the central region, the number of people they encountered gradually decreased. Originally, the people of the Lu tribe thought that they would encounter more obstacles when they were in the central region. But who would have thought that the places they passed through would be less troublesome? Although they did encounter a lot of small troubles along the way, such as being attacked by some people who were not from the central region, they passed through smoothly. However, after leaving the central region, when the tribes were not so densely distributed, they might encounter more troubles. In the central region, there were many people and many eyes. Perhaps some people wanted to hide their identities and attack the Lu tribesmen, but there were too many people in the central region. If they were accidentally discovered by others and recognized the person in the dark, then the person who attacked them would be unlucky. But when there were fewer people, no one would be able to see what they were doing. Even if the Lu tribesmen wanted to find help, they couldn't. Therefore, after leaving the central region, they had to be more vigilant. At night, the team gathered to rest. Xiao Xian had a bad feeling. After thinking for a while, he took out a straw rope and began to perform divination. The Yanjiao people were surprised to see Xiao Xian like this. Xiao Xian wouldn't use this method for small matters. It wasn't good to rely on it too much. What if the divination didn't work in the future? How could they survive? That was why, as long as it was something that could be easily solved, Xiao Xian would not use divination. The Yanjiao people also knew this. Because of this, they were curious why Xiao Xian was performing divination again. Did he have a premonition? After the knot was successfully tied, Xiao Xian frowned and pondered. The others didn't ask. Xiao Xian would naturally tell them when he figured it out. However, they were still curious about what Xiao Xian had divined. It didn't look good. Could it be that someone wanted to rob them? The divination didn't look good either. Xiao Xian looked in a direction. It was the direction of the desert. The premonition he had was related to the desert. Not divination couldn't accurately predict what was going to happen. There were too many variables. Xiao Xian couldn't predict what was going to happen, but he was sure that there was danger coming from that direction. The target was clear too. As he thought about it, Xiao Xian looked in Gong Che's direction. This time, the target wasn't the Lu tribe or the Yanjiao people. It was Gong Che. The sun couldn't be seen now. There was only a little light from the clouds. Gong Che didn't wear his hood, revealing his bald head. Xiao Xian didn't think that Gong Che's actions. Guang Yi, you and Xiang Chen will leave with the team tomorrow, said Xiao Xian to Guang Yi, who was resting. Guang Yi frowned deeply. Something's going to happen? They're not targeting the Lu tribe. Xiao Xian pointed in the direction of the desert. There might be people coming from there. You guys leave first. Guang Yi couldn't see faces, but he had a good sense of direction. He could tell where Xiao Xian was pointing. He wanted to ask them to stay and help, but he remembered the undead monsters in the desert. He paused and asked, "Just you? Don't you need more people to stay here?" "He'll definitely stay." Xiao Xian tilted his head in Gong Che's direction. Their target might be Gong Che. Those people's target was Gong Che and not Xiao Xian. Guang Yi was relieved. From his perspective, Gong Che wasn't a member of his tribe. He didn't care if anything happened to him. Xiao Xian, on the other hand, could run if he couldn't win. Cha-Cha could follow him. It was much easier to fly in the air. It would be more inconvenient to leave more people behind. Since Xiao Xian had already made his decision, it must have been a decision after careful consideration. Guang Yi did not say anything else. The next day, after a night of rest, the team set off again. This time, Guang Yi and Xiang Chen were in the lead. They would bring their people and travel with the Lu tribe to the Flaming River. With them around, Xiao Xian wouldn't have to worry. Many people in the Lu tribe were confused when they saw Xiao Xian and Gong Che staying behind. However, the Yanjiao didn't say anything. They didn't ask any further questions. The only thing they knew was that Xiao Xian stayed behind to stop some trouble. The cries of the reared beasts gradually faded into the distance. The team could no longer be seen. Xiao Xian found a tree nearby and sat down to rest, waiting for the people to arrive. Those people must have a way to track them. When Robber 11 went to the secret underground room in the Flaming River Castle, he brought along special tracking insects. The people from Rock Hill City had many tricks up their sleeves, so they must have a way to find their targets. This place was surrounded by forests. They weren't dense and the trees weren't very big. Perhaps it was because there were occasional people here, but there weren't any thick, ancient trees. There were mountains nearby. They weren't tall and were considered big in this area. However, they couldn't be compared to the forests where fearsome beasts lived. The surroundings were green and there was still some dew on the grass in the morning. Xiao Xian rested on the tree and waited. As long as they didn't move, those people would definitely find them. Even if they didn't arrive today, they would definitely arrive tomorrow. The Yanjiao and Lu tribes teams were already far away. No matter how big the commotion here was, it wouldn't affect them. Gong Che sat on a large rock under the shade of a tree. A long time ago, a team used to rest here. There were some drawings carved on the rock with hard tools, but they were already blurred so he couldn't tell what was written. The hood covered most of Gong Che's face, so his eyes couldn't be seen clearly. He just stared in one direction for a long time. He didn't even blink once. He was like a stone statue, maintaining the same posture without moving. This wasn't something a normal person could do. The sun hung high in the sky and set. The clouds in the sky were burning and the ground seemed to be covered in a layer of red. An eagle screeched in the sky. Xiao Xian stood up and looked in a certain direction. They're here. Not long after, 4 flying birds appeared in the distant sky. When the figures in the air flew closer, Xiao Xian also recognized these birds. They were the species domesticated by the desert slave masters, a type of eagle that lived in the desert. Compared to eagles in other places, their claws were larger in proportion to their bodies. Every toe was longer and harder. When they found prey in the desert, even if the prey burrowed into the sand, they could dive down and dig their long sharp claws into the sand to fish out the prey. Many desert snakes, scorpions and lizards were the prey of these desert eagles. There weren't many people coming. Of the 4 eagles, 3 had 1 person standing on them. The leading eagle had 2 people on its back. There were 5 people in total. Xiao Xian became even more cautious. The fewer people there were, the harder it would be to deal with them. Xiao Xian recognized the 2 people on the leading desert eagle. It was Su Lu, whom he had met in the desert, and the cloaked man who controlled the puppets beside Su Lu. There was only 1 person on each of the other 3 eagles. Su Lu and the person beside him were sprawled on the eagle's back. The other 3 were standing, and they stood very steadily. They were dressed like the strange puppets, but Xiao Xian knew that these 3 people were different from the puppets he encountered in the desert. Before the 3 desert eagles landed, the 3 people had already jumped off their backs and fell. Bang bang bang. The sound of 3 people landing on the ground shook the ground. It was like the muffled sound of boulders crashing onto the ground. There was a thick layer of grass on the ground, so there wasn't a lot of dust. After the 3 people landed, they didn't move. Instead, they stood in the crater. Because their faces were covered with cloth, Xiao Xian couldn't see what they looked like. However, through his special vision, he could see that their bones were brighter than normal people's. They didn't breathe, nor did they have a heartbeat. They didn't even pant after landing. They were like lifeless pieces of wood. Puppets. They were special puppets. Xiao Xian looked at Gong Xie. These 3 people were very similar to Gong Xie. Perhaps they were Gong Xie's clansmen who had been turned into puppets. Unlike Gong Xie, these 3 people had traces of red energy flowing through their bones. This was the energy source that controlled their movements. It was also the power of the fire seed that had been implanted into their bodies. Someone had implanted the power of the fire seed into their bones to control them. The person beside Su Lu couldn't have done this. Otherwise, Gong Xie would have been turned into a puppet long ago. However, Xiao Xian didn't sense anyone else around. Where was the person controlling these 3 people? Or did they not need someone to control them? Xiao Xian's heart skipped a beat. The puppets he had seen in the desert could only be considered high-level puppets. However, these 3 people might be even more special. As Xiao Xian pondered, the eagle that Su Lu and the person beside him were on had landed. They weren't like the 3 puppets who couldn't even feel pain. They wouldn't fall from the sky. Instead, they waited for the desert eagle to stabilize itself before coming down. After Su Lu steadied himself, he looked around. His gaze lingered on Gong Xie, who was sitting on a large rock. Then, he looked at Xiao Xian, who had already come down from the tree. Yanjiao Xiao Xian. Su Lu shouted angrily. Su Lu was so angry that his liver hurt when he recalled Su Gu's gloating expression after he had abandoned his armor and escaped with his body covered in wounds. The Luoya city king was very disappointed in him. He had also thought of finding the ancient corpse. He didn't hesitate to use his treasures to contact the thief and ask him to go to the Yanjiao tribe to find the lost ancient corpse. Unfortunately, there was no news of the thief. The thief said that he was already dead. Fortunately, he still had one more chance. As long as he brought back the lost ancient corpse, he still had a chance to compete with Su Gu. Su Li's eyes were filled with murderous intent when he thought of the culprit who had caused all this. However, when he thought of Xiao Xian's strength, he became wary. Fortunately, he didn't have to fight this time. Otherwise, even 10 of him wouldn't be a match for Xiao Xian. Chu Su. Su Lu looked at the person standing beside him. The person wearing a yellow sackcloth cloak didn't pay attention to Su Lu. His gaze was fixed on Gong Xie. Before he landed, he knew that the person sitting there was the person he was looking for. However, he couldn't help but feel that something was wrong. He looked at the exposed half of the person's face and the pair of pale hands. His heart skipped a beat. He looked at Xiao Xian abruptly and asked, What did you do? Xiao Xian smiled and didn't say anything. Chu Su's cloak was still covered in sand. The wind that blew against him still carried the smell of the desert. It didn't fit in with the surrounding atmosphere. Chu Su looked at the person who was sitting on the rock and wearing a cloak. The gray and rough sackcloth was fluttering in the wind. He was also wearing a cloak, but compared to the 3 people they brought with them, he looked more like a normal person. If it weren't for the fact that the person wasn't breathing and that the tracking device in his hand was pointing in the same direction, he would have doubted his own judgment. What did the Yanjiao people do with the ancient corpse? Why would there be such a huge change? Why are you asking so many questions? Sula became impatient when Chu Su didn't move. Xiao Xian, hand the ancient corpse over to us and we'll let you go this time. With 3 powerful helpers by his side, Sulu was confident in his words. Xiao Xian chuckled. Xiao Xian's nonchalant attitude infuriated Sulu. Xiao Xian's gaze and tone were obviously looking down on him. Sulu recalled that he had suffered a few losses at the hands of Xiao Xian. He took a deep breath and said, "Cut the crap. Just kill him." The last sentence was directed at Chu Su. As long as they killed Xiao Xian, they would be able to take the ancient corpse away. Originally, he didn't want to fight Xiao Xian here. If he accidentally lost his life, it wouldn't be worth it. However, with Xiao Xian's attitude, Sula didn't want to give up so easily. His father, the Luoya king, had said that these 3 puppets were different from ordinary puppets. Perhaps they wouldn't have a problem facing Xiao Xian's strange flaming blade? Su Li's expression turned cold when he thought of this. Chu Su, what are you waiting for? Do it. The cloaked man beside him still ignored Su Lu because he noticed that the cloaked man had glanced at him. Under the shadow of the cloaked man's hood, there was a pair of eyes looking back at him. Chu Su suppressed the strange feeling in his heart and said to Xiao Xian again, "Ask him to come here. We want to bring him back to Rock Hill City." Xiao Xian didn't move. "I don't care. Why don't you talk to him personally and see what he thinks? If he wants to go, I won't stop him." What did he mean? Su Lu and Chu Su were puzzled. Then they heard the person sitting on the rock say, "Who are you?" His tone was cold and emotionless. He spoke. Sula felt his scalp go numb and his back felt like it was stuffed with ice. Isn't this an ancient corpse? How can it speak? Chu Su was horrified. The Yanjiao people had brought an ancient corpse out. Judging by the looks of it, he guessed that the Yanjiao people had used some means to turn the ancient corpse into something like a puppet. However, a puppet couldn't speak on its own because it was inanimate. But what was this person sitting on the rock not far away from them? He had placed the ancient corpse under the beast carriage for a long time. He should have been familiar with it. But why did it feel like a complete stranger? He must have been controlled by the Yanjiao people. Chu Su, do it. Su Li's voice was sharp and piercing due to his extreme shock. This time, Chu Su didn't wait any longer. If they wanted to know what had happened to the ancient corpse, they would know with a single look. Do it! Chu Su shouted. As soon as Chu Su's voice fell, the 3 cloaked men standing in the pit charged towards Gonqie like arrows released from a bow. Feeling the hostility, Gonqie felt an indescribable sense of loss. His entire body tensed up. His body, which had no temperature to begin with, seemed to be emitting cold air. The temperature around him seemed to be dropping as well. They were his tribesmen. Gonqie had already sensed them before they had even appeared. Now, he could feel the murderous aura emanating from the 3 tribesmen. Their target was him. Chapter 772. 3 against 1? Xiao Xian wondered if he should help, but Gonqie didn't seem like he wanted him to. Xiao Xian decided to observe the situation first. After all, this was a battle between the Han tribesmen. Gonqie's excitement when he first saw these 3 tribesmen was now replaced by intense disappointment. Although he was mentally prepared, he still felt disappointed when he saw them in person. A greenish-black fist quickly enlarged in Gonqie's eyes. In the blink of an eye, it was already in front of him. A strong murderous intent radiated from his opponent's arm. He raised his arm as if he had gathered all his strength into a spear. He didn't say anything, but his intention was clear. Kill. His opponent's face was covered by linen cloth, so he couldn't see his face. However, Gonqie recognized him. Other than this person, there were 2 other people covered in yellow linen cloth. Although they had been asleep for a long time and most of their memories were blurry, Xueqi could still recognize them. As soon as the two men moved their arms, they revealed their intentions. They opened their fingers with dark brown sharp nails, drawing a brown ray of light in the air. Along with the sharp sound of an arrow piercing through the air, they were like the fangs of a poisonous snake that could not wait to bite its target. Xueqi didn't dodge this attack. Instead, he chose to face the combined attack of the three people head-on and collided with them. Boom! Their fists and arms collided with each other, creating shockwaves that stirred up the wind. Shockwaves spread in all directions. The fists and fingers of the three people covered in yellow linen cloth were like carefully forged hammers and spears. They easily left deep marks on the large rock Xueqi was sitting on. Xueqi could even see the sparks that flew when their long brown fingernails scratched the rock. In the next moment, these fingers, which were as sharp as the claws of fearsome beasts, were pointed at Xueqi's face with cold murderous intent. The three of them seemed to be suppressing Xueqi and forcing him to retreat step by step. The four of them didn't have any weapons, but the sound of their fists, palms, and legs colliding with each other was like the sound of metal clashing against metal. Their fierce fighting style didn't seem like something a normal person could do. They were like wild beasts that had gone mad and were fighting with no regard for their lives. Every time Xueqi took a step back, it was as if he was under great pressure. Every time he stepped on the ground, the grass would be blown away, the ground would collapse, the soil would break, and the pebbles would fly up into the air. The dry areas were even cracked from the impact. In just a few seconds, the trees were broken one by one. Some were broken by Xueqi, and some were broken by the four of them. The originally flat ground was now full of potholes. What used to be a complete patch of green grass now looked like debris that could be removed at any time. For a moment, the pebbles on the field were scattered. It felt like the earth was shaking and the mountains were shaking. The four people fighting felt like they were in the middle of a turbulent storm. Xueqi's body was covered in wounds. Some of his flesh was even dug out by the sharp fingers. Many of his bones were broken. If it was a normal person, his face would be twisted in pain, but Xueqi didn't seem to feel it. The three people were also kicked away by Xueqi. The sound of bones breaking could be heard clearly. But in the next moment, they got up and continued fighting without any injuries. Sulu listened to the continuous banging sounds and remembered the pain he felt when he was beaten up by the Luoya king. He couldn't help but shiver. Just listening to the sounds made him feel pain all over. The three people were different from the normal puppets he usually saw. They were indeed the helpers his father hired. What kind of power was this? Were they the real undying monsters? Xueqi, who was standing next to Sulu, looked over. Of course, he knew that these were the real undying monsters. At the same time, he felt sorry for the ancient corpse that was stolen. Looking at the three people fighting, Xueqi's heart was bleeding. One of the ancient corpses should have been his, but it was stolen by the Yanjiao people. Now, looking at the attacks of the three people, it was obvious that they wanted to destroy the corpse. He didn't know if he would be able to see the corpse in one piece after the battle. His lord's goal was to get rid of the ancient corpse. Xueqi felt that it was a pity, but there was nothing he could do. Since the Yanjiao people had the ancient corpse under their control, he could only destroy it. He didn't know what method the Yanjiao people used to change the ancient corpse. What a pity. If this body was made into a puppet, how much help would it be to me? Xueqi sighed and looked at Xueqi angrily. His eyes were filled with venom. He sneered and thought to himself, once I get rid of that ancient corpse, you won't be able to run away either. Xueqi also noticed Xueqi's gaze. He could have gone over and killed the two defeated puppets right now, but he was more concerned about the battle between the four Han tribesmen. As for Sulu and Xueqi, they were just small fries. If Xueqi was the one controlling the three puppets, Xueqi would have attacked him without hesitation. But now, Xueqi could see that Xueqi couldn't really control the three puppets. In other words, the three puppets' actions against Xueqi were beyond Xueqi's control. Xueqi, Suli's companion, couldn't compare to the three puppets in terms of speed and attack power. He recalled the puppets he encountered in the desert and compared them to Xueqi. Not only were the auras they exuded different when they attacked, even the energy they wielded was different from Xueqi's. The one controlling the three puppets was even stronger. Who else was around? Xueqi carefully sensed his surroundings again. There was no one else around. If the person who made the puppets didn't follow them, then there was another possibility. These 3 puppets could act without their master's help. These 3 puppets were given some kind of command. Xueqi only turned on the switch of the command. He wasn't the one controlling the puppets. Xian could see with his special vision that there were 2 types of energy in the 3 puppets' bones. They came from 2 different fire seeds. One was the fire seed energy of the Han tribe. It was the energy that originally existed in the 3 puppets' bodies. The other was the energy that seeped into their bodies to control them. However, this energy was different from the energy in the puppets Xian saw in the desert. It was also different from the fire seed energy he knew. It didn't seem to be complete. It was as if someone had purposely filtered this energy. The energy that conflicted with the fire seed energy in the 3 puppets' bodies was removed, leaving only the energy that could coexist with the fire seed energy of the Han tribe. These 2 powers coexisted in the bodies of the 3 puppets. For example, if the power of the Han tribe's fire seed in the 3 puppets was equivalent to the torso and limbs of a person, then the other power was equivalent to the brain of the body. It was the master of the body. As the 4 people fought fiercely, the cloaks on their bodies were gradually destroyed and torn apart by the wind from the fists and claws. The 3 people who had originally covered their faces with linen cloth now revealed their faces. The 3 of them looked just like Gan Xie when he first laid in the coffin. They looked like dried corpses. The only difference was that Gan Xie was in a state of suspended animation. The 3 of them, on the other hand, had lost their consciousness. From the moment they were turned into puppets, they were no longer the Han tribesmen they used to be. Gan Xie hit one of them and sent him tumbling in the air for more than 20 meters. Taking advantage of this small gap, he tore off the tattered linen cloth on his body and threw it away. It was already sunset and the sun would disappear soon. There was no need to cover himself. The injuries he suffered in the forest outside the Lu tribe had already healed. Even the scars had disappeared. The new injuries on his body were much more serious than the last time. Some of his internal organs were even damaged. There was no time to breathe. After he hit one of them, there were still 2 more. They didn't show any mercy and attacked Gan Xie's shoulders, abdomen, and limbs. Xian looked at the situation on the other side and frowned. Gan Xie's mentality wasn't right. Although the 3 of them were very strong, as if they were well-trained men of sacrifice, Gan Xie didn't even have the strength to fight back. He had been fighting them with brute force, but he didn't use his full strength. If he used half of the strength he used in the forest outside the Lu tribe, he wouldn't be in this situation now. This wasn't good. If this continued, even Gan Xie, who was stronger than normal people, would be crippled. Xian took a step forward and was about to help when Gan Xie shouted, "Don't interfere." Hearing Gan Xie's words, Xian paused and retreated back to his original position. He didn't want to go any closer. Since Gan Xie wanted to solve this himself, he would do it himself. No matter what the consequences were, he had to accept it. In fact, Xian didn't have to help him. Xian knew that Gan Xie didn't want outsiders to interfere. However, his actions just now were a reminder to Gan Xie that if he didn't change his attitude, he would really die. Gan Xie was also forced back by the 3 of them. Although he didn't show it on his face, his heart was filled with helplessness and anger. He knew that these 3 people wanted to kill him. After he heard the news from Robber 11, he thought about how he should face his former tribesmen. However, he still hesitated when facing these 3 people. After all, they were Han tribesmen. In this world, there were probably only a few Han tribesmen left. The other Han tribesmen had long disappeared with the passage of time. Gan Xie was distracted for a moment. A series of bone-cracking sounds came from his chest and he flew into the air. In the next moment, another person appeared behind him and punched him. Gan Xie's feet didn't even touch the ground before he was sent flying again. This was a true encirclement attack. Gan Xie had a strange feeling. It was as if his soul had left his body. At this moment, he was like a bystander, quietly watching his body get injured. The other 3 people didn't hold back their murderous aura at all as they attacked. The 11 Han tribesmen who had merged with their fire seeds were already stronger than others. One could imagine how much damage they could do. In fact, Gan Xie felt that he should give up on living. His tribe was no more. Besides him, there were no other Han tribesmen in this world. What was the point of him staying in this world? However, there was another thought in his heart. It was because of this hidden thought that he didn't mind looking for other tribesmen who had merged with their fire seeds. He also looked for people from the other side of the sea who no longer lived as a tribe. He wanted to get an answer from these people, an answer that would convince him. At this moment, when he was so close to death, Gonqie suddenly felt that under the threat of death from these former tribesmen, he seemed to have seen through the thoughts in his heart. Gonqie seemed to see 11 glowing figures appear in the endless darkness. They seemed to be talking about something. He knew that it was when the shamaness had chosen the 10 of them to solve the problem of the fire seed. She had called them over for a final talk. At that time, they were already prepared to sacrifice their lives for their tribe and their fire seed. But what happened next? In the dark void, their glowing figures gradually disappeared. First, it was the figure who seemed to be seriously injured. Then it was the others. 1, 2. They all disappeared into nothingness. In the end, only one figure was left. It was Gonqie himself. Did the Han tribe disappear? No, it was still here. As long as he was alive, the Han tribe would always exist. Even if he was the only one left in the tribe. A single person's tribe proved that the Han tribe still existed in this world. It hadn't been abandoned by time. Puff, puff, puff. 3 people, 6 hands. One hand with sharp nails pierced through Gonqie's shoulder from the front, one fist into his chest, and one hand from the back. It almost brushed past Gonqie's spine and almost pierced through it. 2 more hands were grabbed by Gonqie. The last hand was originally aiming for Gonqie's head. However, it stopped when it was half a palm away from Gonqie's face. Gonqie looked at the 2 people in front of him. Their shriveled faces were no longer recognizable. However, Gonqie could clearly remember what they used to look like. Unfortunately, you are already dead, Gonqie said slowly. All of you are dead. Every word was like a boulder that had been lifted from his heart. But I can't die. When the last word was said, the last trace of sadness in Gonqie's eyes disappeared completely. It was replaced by a cold glint, like an unsheathed blade. His red eyes shone with a bloody light. Sulu and Chu Su didn't know what was going on when they saw the sudden stalemate. What's going on? Sulu was stunned. Why did they stop fighting? Go on, just one more move. Chu Su felt his eyelids twitch. A chill ran down his spine. He had a bad feeling. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. Take his head and come back. Chu Su yelled anxiously. However, the 3 puppets seemed to be frozen in place. They didn't react to Chu Su's words at all. Xiao was also shocked by the situation. It seemed like Gonqie was going to be dismembered. However, the situation was developing in a strange direction. It wasn't that the 3 Han people who were turned into puppets suddenly gained consciousness. Instead, it was that the power that supported their movements had changed. With his special vision, Xiao could see that the energy in the 3 puppets was surging towards Gonqie's body. The air around them began to change. Xiao could clearly feel that the sweat on his body was quickly drying up. The water vapor in the air seemed to be rapidly sucked away. The energy of the fire seed. Xiao was very sensitive to the energy of the fire seed. The energy of the fire seed was similar to the energy in Gonqie's body. The fire seed of the Han tribe. Although the fire seed of the Han tribe was gone, it was still in the bodies of the 11 people. Of course, the 3 puppets that Sulu brought with him had it too. But now, Gonqie was sucking out the energy of the fire seed from the 3 puppets. A leaf fluttered down. Then more leaves fell. Xiao looked up. The green leaves on the tree started to fall one by one. The wind shouldn't have caused this. Upon closer inspection, the stems of the falling leaves had dried up. Taking a deep breath, Xiao whistled hastily. Cha-Cha, who had been watching from the sky, wanted to fight the 4 desert eagles several times. When he heard Xiao's whistle, he quickly descended. Xiao jumped onto the eagle's back. Let's go. Something big was about to happen. Gonqie, who had been standing there quietly, suddenly widened his eyes and let out a long whistle. It was different from the last time at the Flaming River Castle. There was a faint rumbling sound, like a blizzard or a tsunami. It also seemed to be mixed with the roars of beasts. It was very strange. Following Gonqie's roar, the aura around him started to increase rapidly. The mountains not far away started to shake and the ground started to shake. Even though Cha-Cha had brought Xiao away from the ground, he could feel a chill on his skin. It was as if there was a powerful force attacking the forest. No matter how slow Sulu was, he knew that the situation had changed. It was something they didn't want to see. His forehead was covered in cold sweat because of Gonqie's whistle. Xiao's actions reminded Sulu of something. Quick, run. Sulu whistled and waited for the desert eagles in the sky to come down. However, the desert eagles were too afraid of the danger on the ground. After hearing Suli's whistle, they only circled around and didn't land. Sulu was so angry that he wanted to kill all 4 of the eagles and feed them to his slaves. However, now was not the time to be angry. He felt the shadow of death looming over this place. Run! Sulu screamed in his heart. If the desert eagles didn't come down, Sulu could only run on his own. Xueqi saw that the 3 spiritual puppets didn't respond for a long time. He gritted his teeth and ran with all his might after Sulu. Crack, crack, crack. Sounds like beans popping rang out continuously. Sulu didn't even dare to look back. Gonqie felt the energy gathering in his body. This energy wasn't pure. Some of it didn't belong to the fire seed of the Han tribe. When he absorbed it, this energy repelled him. This was the energy that controlled the 3 tribesmen. The moment he absorbed it, Gonqie could feel his skin being torn apart. As he absorbed the energy from the fire seed of the 3 tribesmen, this external force entered his body. Gonqie felt as if a knife was piercing into his bones, but he had to face it. Perhaps the person who made the puppets had considered this possibility. If Gonqie forcefully absorbed the energy from the 3 tribesmen, not only would he fail, but he would also lose his life. Just as the external force was attacking him like a knife, trying to disrupt Gonqie's absorption process, another force appeared in Gonqie's body. It blocked the external force and allowed Gonqie to continue absorbing the energy. This was the force Xiao Xian used to wake him up. This force had always existed in Gonqie's body. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Gonqie crazily sent the absorbed energy into every meridian and bone in his body. He sent it to every part of his body. Life. He had to live. He had to take back the energy that belonged to the fire seed of the Han tribe. Pass. Come. Gonqie could feel the power of the fire seed in his body surging violently. It was as if thousands of ferocious beasts were charging at him at the same time. The bulging veins in his body moved like wild pythons, jumping up and down. His tensed muscles moved, and his bones creaked. It was as if they were being stretched, compressed, or reassembled. Lines appeared on Gonqie's naked body. The crisscrossing totem patterns were like tough vines that lived in the driest parts of the desert. They crisscrossed and spread all over his body. Gonqie seemed to hear the familiar sound of blood flowing in his veins, but he knew that it wasn't real blood. It was the flow of the fire seed's energy. As his aura continued to rise, Gonqie let out another deafening roar. This roar was even more frightening than the previous one. It was as if there was a vast power within it. Everyone's hearts clenched as they listened to it. It was as if there was an ancient beast that had just awakened. The energy that Gonqie had absorbed finally exploded at this moment. The murderous aura that erupted was like the night in the desert in Rock Hill City. It was cold and dry. Gonqie's hair that had already rotted over time started to grow at a speed visible to the naked eye. It wasn't the color of a normal person's hair. It was white. On his bald head, strands of white hair rushed out from his scalp. They were lifted up by the shockwave and extended upwards. On his fingers, brown claws that looked like ferocious beasts extended from his bones. They reflected the last rays of the sun, but they didn't have a trace of warmth. A sandy yellow flame started to appear around Gonqie's body. It rushed up from the bottom. The grass under Gonqie's feet instantly dried up. It was as if it had lost all its moisture due to the high temperature. Under the ground, there seemed to be a powerful force that was about to break through. Boom! The sand-yellow smoke suddenly expanded rapidly, exploding like a sound wave, spreading in all directions. Everywhere it passed, the grass and trees withered, the leaves on the trees all fell, and the withered branches let out brittle cracking sounds, breaking and falling to the ground. Sulu and Xueqi, who thought that they had escaped the danger zone, were also shocked by this scene. They turned around and tried to run further away. However, it was already too late. The sandy yellow flame had already spread to where they were. Their running footsteps became slower and slower. Their legs started to shrivel up from the soles of their feet. As for the 3 puppets, their bodies started to disintegrate from the places where they touched Gonqie. It was as if they were weathering rocks. They were disintegrated into tiny particles of dust and were blown away by the shockwave. Gonqie was the only one who stood there quietly. He was like a sharp blade in the cold desert under the night sky. Chapter 773. The sky was completely dark and the surroundings were dead silent. The sand yellow flame started to fade until it completely disappeared. The aura of the Han fire seed gradually disappeared as well. Xiao Xian looked down and saw that Gong Xie was still standing in his original position. Cha-Cha was a little further away from the sand yellow flames, so Xiao Xian couldn't see what had happened to Gong Xie. He could only see that his bones were brighter than before. This meant that the fire seed's power had changed his body again. It was as if his body had been carefully forged. Out of the 4 people who were fighting together, only Gong Xie was left. The other 3 had disappeared. The moment the fire seed's power was completely drained, the 3 of them were truly dead. After all, their bones had turned to ashes and their fire seed's power had been drained. There was nothing left to support their movements. However, he didn't know how Gong Xie was doing right now. He didn't know if Gong Xie was still sane. Xiao Xian didn't plan to go down for now. He didn't know if the person who went berserk just now would attack him again. On the other side, Su Lu and Chu Su were running away. They seemed to be affected by the sand yellow flames. Their steps weren't stable and they weren't fast either. On the ground, Gong Xie finally moved. His footsteps made squeaking sounds on the ground. The tattered cloaks left behind by the 3 Han puppets were blown away by the wind. Gong Xie glanced at the cloaks and then looked away. He turned towards the direction where Su Lu and Chu Su were running. Rustle, 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 rustle. The footsteps were getting faster and faster. Su Lu and Chu Su heard the sound of footsteps approaching them. When they thought of the scene they just saw, they didn't have the courage to fight anymore. A strong murderous intent was approaching. They could even hear the sound of an arm cutting through the wind. Chu Su staggered and fell to the ground. One of his teeth was broken by a rock on the ground. He didn't even have the time to complain about his broken teeth. Chu Su grabbed a rock and threw it at the ground without even turning his head back. Bang! A few sparks flew in the night. The stone thrown by Mao Yu had already been broken into several small pieces. Chu Su listened to the commotion behind him, and his heart started to race. That ancient corpse didn't look any different from the others, so why did it become like this? What on earth had the Yen Jiao done? As he was thinking, Chu Su felt a burning pain on his back. It was as if thorns had swept across his back and scraped away his flesh. Ah! A blood-curdling scream rang out in the dark night, causing Su Lu, who was running in front, to shudder. He quickened his pace. Su Lu thought that if Chu Su could buy him some more time, he would be able to escape. However, after a miserable shriek, Chu Su went silent. Su Li's scalp tingled as the hissing noises approached him quickly. His legs were a little sore and numb, probably because of the yellow sand flame just now. He couldn't display his usual state at all. However, the person behind him was like a berserk beast, closing in on him with all his strength. Previously, Su Lu thought that the distance between them had widened and he still had a chance to escape. Now he knew that he was too naive. In the air, Xiao Xian listened to the blood-curdling screams and the constant thumps on the ground. He knew that Su Lu and Chu Su wouldn't live to see the next day. Rather than calling it a chase, it was more like Gong Xie was venting his emotions. Although the 3 puppets had lost their original consciousness and were now killing machines, they were still part of the Han tribe. Perhaps they had a good relationship with Gong Xie a long time ago. Let's leave first and find a place to rest. We'll continue tomorrow. Xiao Xian didn't know how long Cha-Cha would remain in this state. He told Cha-Cha to rest on a nearby mountain. After flying for a whole day, Cha-Cha was tired. Plus, Cha-Cha felt that Gong Xie was extremely dangerous. He had never gotten close to Gong Xie before, so he was more than happy to leave. There were no longer any trees in the nearby mountains. Perhaps there were some plants and animals that didn't manage to escape in time, but they still had some life left in the yellow sand flame. However, they would need a long time to recover. At least, they wouldn't be able to return to their previous state in a short period of time. The next day was still a sunny day. Xiao Xian went over to take a look. Gong Xie hadn't left yet. Instead, he was sitting on a rock, maintaining the same posture. No one knew what he was thinking. If it wasn't for his white hair and the sharp dark brown claws on his fingers, Xiao Xian would have thought that he was the same as before. Gong Xie's breathing had stabilized. When he heard footsteps approaching, Gong Xie turned around. Xiao Xian saw a pair of bloodshot eyes and 2 fangs protruding out of Gong Xie's mouth like a beast's. Xiao Xian was speechless. This was a big change. Seeing Xiao Xian's shocked expression, Gong Xie looked at the claws on his hands. He activated the newly gathered fire seed energy in his body, and the totemic patterns on his body gradually disappeared. The dark brown claws retracted into his fingers. Even the 2 fangs on his mouth disappeared. No one knew what kind of lethality was hidden in this seemingly weak body. Gong Che's body structure was different now. Compared to a normal person's skeleton, there were many more strange structures. For example, his spine was mutated. Every vertebra was elongated horizontally. There were also many new structures in his arms and legs. It was just that they were covered by his skin and flesh, so it wasn't obvious on the surface. The fire seed could change a person's body structure. This was the first time Xueqi had seen this in a human body. Many warriors in the tribe would experience changes when they used their totemic power, but it was only temporary. When everything was over, they would return to their original form and have the same skeletal structure as the others. However, Gong Che was different. Compared to his previous form, the changes were huge even under normal circumstances. Moreover, Gong Che was able to absorb the fire seed energy in the 3 puppets for his own use. Xueqi was confused. Not everyone could do this. Seeing that Gong Che had no intention of attacking and seemed to be conscious and not hostile, Xueqi asked, "What do you plan to do?" "Work together." "How about it?" This meant that he would return to the Yanjiao tribe's territory with Xueqi. They wouldn't go to the desert for the time being. Xueqi looked at Gong Che in surprise and nodded. "We'll talk about the cooperation later. First, you should find a cloak." After yesterday's battle, Gong Che was almost naked. Xueqi didn't want to bring him everywhere. After hearing Xueqi's words, Gong Che remembered that he wasn't wearing a cloak. No wonder he felt uncomfortable. The sun was out. Gong Che raised his head and looked at the sun in the sky. The sun couldn't hurt him, but it made him feel uncomfortable. After absorbing the fire seed energy from the 3 people, the feeling became stronger. It was strange. Not far away, Chu Su and Su Li's corpses were covered in a layer of dust. Even without the dust, it was impossible to tell what they looked like. Even if the people from Rock Hill City were here, they might not be able to recognize them. Last night, Gong Che's attack was filled with anger and murderous intent. After Xueqi and Gong Che left, the sun was hanging high in the sky. 5 figures appeared on a mountain. They were tribesmen who lived in this area. "What do you guys think happened here last night?" The people who came over asked carefully as they climbed up the mountain. Their eyes scanned their surroundings cautiously. Their tribe wasn't very close to this place, but they could still hear the sounds from here. They even felt a terrifying energy wave. However, no one dared to come out. One reason was that it was inconvenient to move at night. If they weren't careful, they could lose their lives. Another reason was that they felt that with their meager strength, if an accident were to happen, they would not have the confidence to escape. The sudden surge of power at that time was too terrifying. Could it be fearsome beasts? Someone guessed. Impossible. There are no fearsome beasts here. Unless they were brought here by someone. Also, the shaman said that the energy wave felt like a fire seed. We don't know what happened. Is there a tribe merging fire seeds? We've been here so many times. How can we not know where there are tribes? But the truth is, there are no tribes there. As they spoke, the 5 of them climbed up the mountain. Their tribe was further away from here. Every time they came here, they would climb the mountain because there would be some edible fruits on the mountain. They would take those fruits back when they climbed the mountain. Tightening the bamboo baskets on their backs, they panted and wiped the sweat off their foreheads. They looked in front of them. That was where the energy wave came from last night. However, when they saw the situation there, they were so shocked that they froze. Their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Their jaws dropped and they didn't react for a long time. They rubbed their eyes and looked again. That's right, it was still the same. What happened here? The 5 of them stood at the top of the mountain, stunned. In front of them, as far as their eyes could see, the grass and trees had all withered. The flowers that should have bloomed in clusters during this season had all withered. There was no beautiful color. Everything, the green trees, the various flowers and plants, had all turned yellow. It was as if the vitality of this place had been sucked out overnight and turned into a land of death. When they finally came back to their senses, they rolled and crawled away from here. They ran back to their tribe. They wanted to tell the news to the people in their tribe so that they would never come here again. Maybe the people who came here would suddenly become the same as the grass and trees there? Not long after, there were all kinds of rumors in this area. Some said that a king beast had appeared, some said that a tribe had deliberately created all this, and some linked it to the people on the other side of the sea. In short, there were different opinions. After all, no one had seen the truth of all these changes with their own eyes. Chapter 774. Xiao Xian and Gong Xie were both very fast. Xiao Xian was carried in the air by Cha-Cha, so he was much faster than people on the ground. They didn't need to climb mountains. Gong Xie was different from normal people, so he didn't feel tired even after running for a whole day. In less than 3 days, Xiao Xian caught up with the main group in front. Seeing Xiao Xian return safely, the Yanjiao people finally relaxed. "Are you okay?" Guang Yi looked at Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian didn't look injured. "I'm fine. Those people weren't after me in the first place." Xiao Xian briefly explained what happened to Su Lu and Chu Su. Guang Yi looked at Gong Xie. Gong Xie had changed his clothes so he couldn't recognize Gong Xie's face. However, he remembered that Gong Xie's skin was always pale and he always looked like he was short of blood. He was also bald. Why did he suddenly have white hair? Moreover, his complexion was much rosier. How strange. Due to his own face blindness, Guang Yi asked the others and got the same answer. He's changed so much. And I feel like... Guang Yi's eyes scanned Gong Xie's body. His instincts told him, this person seems to be more dangerous than before. The other Yanjiao warriors beside Guang Yi nodded in agreement. Although they couldn't tell much, their instincts were trained from years of hunting in the mountains. Xiao Xian told Guang Yi and the others about Gong Xie's transformation and the changes that happened. At least they had a rough idea so they could be prepared for anything that involved Gong Xie in the future. "You're saying that the forest we were resting in and the mountains nearby have all turned into dead lands?" If the person speaking wasn't Xiao Xian, Guang Yi would have thought that he was lying. The power of the fire seed is really strong. But it's understandable considering the power of our ancestors. Guang Yi remembered the power Xiao Xian used to bring them across the sea. That wasn't something a normal person could do. Yes. That's right. When the other Yanjiao people heard Guang Yi's words, they weren't as surprised. Especially the Yanjiao people who came from the other side of the sea. They had experienced it firsthand. No one knew better than them how shocked they were. After everyone left, Guang Yi lowered his voice and asked Xiao Xian, he's not a threat to Yanjiao? He pointed at Gong Xie. His current enemy is Rock Hill City. Right now, he's still no match for them, Xiao Xian said. As for the Rain Tribe, they were still ranked behind Rock Hill City. Understood. Guang Yi already knew what Xiao Xian meant before Xiao Xian finished his sentence. Since Gong Xie's enemy was Rock Hill City and he was a powerful person, they could work with him. At the very least, they wouldn't treat him as an enemy. Gong Xie needed allies and Yanjiao didn't mind having another force to fight against Rock Hill City. The group met with some trouble along the way, but they were all dealt with. Although the Lu tribe lost some of their reared beasts, it wasn't a big loss compared to their overall strength. The reared beasts that were too weak to keep up with the group were all slaughtered in advance to be used as food. The cubs were locked up in cages and pulled around in carts. They met some traveling groups along the way. Initially, when they saw the Lu tribe's reared beasts, they had some ideas. However, when they saw that the Lu tribe were Yanjiao tribesmen, they gave up on that idea. Then, when they saw that even the Yanjiao Grand Elder was with them, they gave up on that idea. Those who frequented the Flaming River trading point didn't know the other Yanjiao tribesmen, but they still remembered the most important ones. Especially Zheng Luo and Grand Elder Xiao Xian. The Lu tribesmen were very wary of these traveling groups. When they saw another traveling group, they became even more vigilant. The people in this group were all burly and looked like bandits. The axes and hammers they carried were stained with blood, but they couldn't tell if it was human or beast blood. There were beast hides and some other things in the carts they were pulling. They're from the Flaming River trading point. Guang Yi only needed to glance at the carts to know the answer. He didn't remember the people, but he remembered the beast hides and bones from the Flaming River trading point. Although the goods in the carts were covered with cloth, it wasn't very tight. Guang Yi could tell just by looking at a small corner. Xiao Xian looked at the traveling group and fixed his gaze on the leader of the group. He had some impression of that person. Coincidentally, the leader also looked over, so Xiao Xian nodded slightly in greeting. He recognized me. When the leader saw Xiao Xian smile, his palms started to sweat. If they really wanted to attack, they had to get rid of Xiao Xian as well. Otherwise, they wouldn't have any peace in the future. Even if they never went to the Flaming River trading point again, they would still be hunted down by the Yanjiao tribesmen if they stayed in their own tribe. Thinking quickly, the leader gave Xian a stiff smile. Then he turned to the people in the traveling team who were still watching the Lu tribe raise their beasts and shouted, "What are you looking at? Hurry up!" Thus, the Lu tribesmen watched as the traveling team left. Many of them looked as if they wanted to rob them immediately, but they held back and followed the team as they left. Looking at the Yanjiao tribesmen and the traveling group leaving, Bai Xing was secretly glad that they chose to travel with the Yanjiao tribesmen. This saved them a lot of trouble. When the group finally saw a stone tablet with a Yanjiao totem on it, the Lu tribesmen were the most excited. This stone tablet was a directional sign. It told them which direction to go to reach the Flaming River trading point. "We're finally here." Moving a tribe not only made them physically tired but also mentally stressed. Especially since they had just merged with their fire seed, they felt even more lost and uneasy. The Lu tribesmen didn't need to go to the trading point. Their destination was somewhere upstream from the trading point. "Since we're already here, let's split up." Xian led the Yanjiao tribesmen towards the trading point. After all, everyone was going in different directions. "Wait!" Bai Xing hurriedly called out to Xian and walked over in large strides. He was afraid that Xian would leave with his tribesmen if he was too slow. When he saw the Yanjiao tribesmen looking at him in confusion, Bai Xing forced an awkward smile. Brothers from Yanjiao, can we trouble you to bring us along again? We'll pay you extra. We definitely won't let you come for nothing." When Xian saw Bai Xing like this, he understood that they were afraid that the travel teams here would rob them. There were too many travel teams near the trading point and most of them weren't easy to deal with. Bai Xing's worry was not without reason. "That's fine too." Xian looked at the Yanjiao tribesmen. They didn't seem to be unwilling. It wasn't far anyway. Some of them were even interested in seeing which piece of land the Lu tribesmen had their eyes on. They wanted to test the waters first so they could visit them in the future. Hence, Xian brought the Lu tribesmen to their destination before returning to the trading point. There are more people at the trading point now. Xian noticed the situation as soon as he entered the trading point. It wasn't the people from the other side of the sea. Instead, there were many tribesmen with unfamiliar totemic tattoos. Some of them were probably here for the first time. Everything they saw was new to them and they were wary of everyone. Gon Jie silently ran to the secret underground room to continue thinking about life. Xian asked Zhang Luo about the recent situation at the trading point. These new tribesmen also lived on the banks of the Flaming River. However, some of them lived further away from Yanjiao. Some of them lived in secluded locations so they weren't discovered by Yanjiao. "What are they here for?" Xian asked. "They said they want to learn how to merge the fire seed from us. Many of them have already gone to see the chief. Go back to the headquarters and take a look. Gigu probably has many questions for you," Zhang Luo said. Xian didn't stay long at the trading point. He left and went straight to the headquarters. When Xian arrived, Gigu was looking at an animal skin scroll with a frown. On it was a map that Xian had perfected. "Xian, you're finally back." Gigu quickly waved when he saw Xian. "There's something we need to discuss." Gigu looked worried. Xian had never seen Gigu so troubled before. It didn't seem like Yanjiao was in danger. It was probably something else. "What do you need to discuss?" Xian asked as he looked at the map. "Many tribes want to become Yanjiao's vassals. That's a good thing." "I know, but there are some problems that we can't solve." Gigu told him about the problems that he couldn't solve. Ever since Yanjiao named the Flaming River, tribes in other parts of the mainland started to think about how to name the rivers, lakes, or mountains near their tribes. It was as if naming a place meant that it was their territory. It also carried a special sense of pride. Although most of the tribes living near the Flaming River were small tribes, they had their own ideas. As the name of the Flaming River spread and Yanjiao's influence grew, these small tribes started to think about naming their rivers. However, Yanjiao named the Flaming River using force to make everyone accept this name. People in other parts of the river might not be happy with Yanjiao's naming of the river, but they had no choice but to accept it under the threat of Yanjiao's brute force. However, in other parts of the river, the tribes kept arguing because of the naming battle. In terms of strength, everyone was equal. If they continued to fight, both sides would suffer. In the end, someone suggested asking Yanjiao for help to solve this problem. After all, Yanjiao was the second most powerful tribe in the Flaming River region. No one would dare to say that they were the best. Asking the boss for help was the idea of a follower. Naming is secondary. What I'm worried about is how to divide the area. Gigu pointed at the map. On it were the locations of many tribes and some typical geographical features such as mountains, rivers, lakes, and so on. Xueqi thought further. Not only did he want to solve the problem of naming those people, but he also wanted to do more things. For example, he wanted to categorize those tribes. After quietly listening to Gigu, Xiao nodded. I understand what you mean. Really? What do you think? Gigu asked expectantly. Do you have animal skins that haven't been written before? Yes. Gigu hurriedly passed him the animal skin, paint, and pen. Xiao drew lines on the animal skin. Gigu compared the lines that Xiao drew. The main river was the Flaming River, while the branches were the tributaries. Most tribes live near water sources. Xiao pointed at the lines that he drew. He used red paint to mark the main river and blue to mark the tributaries. We call the area where the main river and the tributaries flow through the Flaming River Basin. Gigu's eyes lit up when he heard the words Flaming River Basin. Xiao's next words touched Gigu's itch. As for the problem you mentioned, we can use the water system to divide it. Chapter 775. Water System? Gigu's interest was piqued. Xiao pointed at the different-shaped tributaries. We'll use the tributaries network to divide the tribes. For example, there are 3 large tributaries in the Flaming River Basin. For example, the one closest to us, its tributaries and lakes form a network of water systems. We'll use the water system to divide the tribes so that it's easier to manage them. Next time, when you mention a tribe, just tell us the water system they're in and remember what it looks like. That way, we'll be able to identify the tribe easily. Yes, that's it. Gigu didn't know how to express his confusion. Now, Xiao's suggestion of dividing the tribes by the water network easily solved Gigu's problem. In the past, if I didn't look at the map, I wouldn't even know where a tribe was when they mentioned it. Even if we need to inform them, we need to have a pattern and order. That way, it'll be faster. Plus, more and more tribes are coming to Yanjiao. If more tribes join us in the future, we can continue to add them. There were so many tribes, but now, there were even smaller tribes that lived in seclusion. Although there weren't many people in the Flaming River Basin, there were still many tribes. It was just that most of the tribes didn't occupy large territories and didn't have many people. Most of them only had a few hundred people. Small tribes needed to stick together to survive. The external threats were getting bigger and bigger, and the competition within the mainland wasn't small either. Most of the tribes living in the Flaming River Basin weren't large. Even if a single tribe could maintain their peace for now, it wouldn't last long. Soon they would be attacked by all sorts of forces. Before Xiao went to the Lu tribe, he had told the tribesmen to inform the other tribes in the Flaming River region to be wary of outsiders, especially those who came from the other side of the sea. People who came at this time were not here for sightseeing. Even the Chonglis, a group that didn't specialize in robbing, almost made the Flaming Horns suffer losses, let alone those who came with ulterior motives. The Lu tribe was a good example. If the Flaming Horns didn't go there, they would have either been taken away by DNFA, or they would have been slowly divided up by other people with ulterior motives. Now, even the Hui tribe and the Tian Shan tribe, who used to hate each other, joined forces to resist the outsiders. Apart from these 2 tribes, no other tribe could take the lead. The Central Plains had already made all sorts of preparations, so there was no need to worry. Flaming River was about to make their move too. This was the question that Gigu had been thinking about all this time. The small tribes in the Flaming River region were already smart enough to look for someone to rely on. They wanted to rely on Yanjiao to survive. At this time, Yanjiao had many things to do. Xiao listened to Gigu's thoughts. Gigu didn't plan to imitate the slave masters on the other side of the sea and establish a kingdom for the time being. The situation in the tribes was more complicated. Many tribes had just merged their fire seeds or just had the idea of merging their fire seeds. For thousands of years, the tribe's ideology was the most important thing. They wouldn't bow down and obey orders in just a few years. Bloody suppression wasn't a wise idea. The Thousand Masks tribe was able to imitate the Flaming River tribe's rule in the central region, because those tribes had been dependent on them for many years. In the Flaming River region, the tribes had always been independent. Some of them didn't even want to work with other tribes. If it wasn't for the circumstances, they wouldn't have come out of hiding. There's something else, Xian, you might not know, Gigu said. What is it? Xiao Xian asked. I only heard about it when you went to the Lu tribe, Gigu said in a low voice. Slave masters are coming. Slave masters? Xiao Xian was puzzled. If it was just a regular slave master, Gigu wouldn't have specially mentioned it at this time. Literally, those people took the tribesmen away, especially the children who haven't awakened their totemic powers. They sold them to the people on the other side of the sea as slaves. Otherwise, why would those tribes who have been hiding or didn't want to get close to us be in such a hurry to find us? There weren't many people in the small tribes here, and the children were targeted by outsiders. After all, children who hadn't awakened their totemic powers were easy to deal with, easy to transport and easy to train. How could the tribesmen remain calm when their new blood was taken away? No wonder they were in such a hurry to go to Yanjiao. They were looking for a big helper because the other tribes in the Flaming River region wouldn't be able to help them. More and more people probably found other ways to cross the sea. They don't need to cross the sea from the desert, they can sail from other places, Xiao Xian said. The longboat tribe had only opened one of the sea routes. Naturally, others could open other routes. The sea route could transport more people. Compared to when the disaster had just ended, there should be a lot more people coming over. On the other hand, the tribesmen were just starting to break free. There were already many mature organizations on the other side of the sea. They worked well together, and these ignorant tribesmen couldn't compare to them. Even if many people realized that their children had been taken away, they couldn't solve the problem in such a short time. They couldn't even reduce the probability of this happening, let alone find them. That's why we need to form an alliance, Gigu said. An alliance of tribes? Xiao Xian already guessed what Gigu was thinking when he found out about Gigu's worries. Dragon Head. Gigu wanted to form an alliance with the other tribes in the Flaming River region. Yanjiao would be the leader of this alliance. That's right. Gigu's eyes burned with passion. Yanjiao still doesn't have enough people. Even if the Taiha tribe, Drumming tribe, and Rain tribe join us, it's still too little. I already had this plan when the trading point was first set up. I just couldn't wait for the right time. Now the chance is here. Yes, some tribes had been influenced by fixed beliefs for a long time. Even if Gigu had a plan, it wouldn't be successful. But now, Yanjiao didn't even have to look for them. They came looking for them on their own. In this crisis, they each looked for a way out. The desire to survive and the development of their tribes forced these people to come out. This was also the first step for the tribesmen who shunned the world and didn't want to interact with other tribes. They had to change in order to survive. But there are many things that need to be done to form an alliance like this. It was rare for Gigu to find someone who could completely understand him. He quickly explained his doubts and troubles. Gigu's troubles could be summed up in one word: order. Nothing could be accomplished without rules. If they followed Gigu's plan to form an alliance, there had to be rules and regulations. They had to let them know the rules of the Flaming River region's alliance. Otherwise, they would think that they would be protected and helped by Yanjiao. Then they would do whatever they wanted. They would fight amongst themselves and fight amongst themselves. If Gigu didn't help them today, he would gloat over their misfortune the next day. That would be a mess. Order. Gigu paused. Yes, we have to make some rules. Since we're here, we have to make some rules. We have to tell them what to do and what not to do. Otherwise, they'll be kicked out of the alliance. Yanjiao wanted to form an alliance to become stronger. At the end of the day, it was for survival and development. It wasn't a charity. In this kind of environment, with the threat from the outside world growing stronger, if they couldn't continue to be strong, they would be defeated one by one. In this place, only the strong were respected. Xiao Xian discussed with Gue He and a few important figures of the tribe for 3 days. Even Zheng Luo, who was guarding the trading point, and Duo Kong, who often stayed at the trading point, were called back. At this time, the trading point was filled with people. The number of foreign tribesmen had increased. Logically speaking, Zheng Luo should be at the trading point every day. But that wasn't the case. All the tribesmen in the trading point had been keeping an eye on the Flaming Horn tribe's movements. They couldn't go to the Flaming Horn headquarters, so they could only observe from the trading point. These few days, they noticed that two important figures in the trading point, Zhang Luo and Duo Kong, were acting strangely. Something big is going to happen. EC looked away from the door and sighed. Something big? Will it threaten us? Grasshopper asked carefully. Yanjiao's strength determined their lives. He didn't want anything to happen to Yanjiao. No, it's a good thing. EC was in a good mood. He smiled and said, I'm afraid there's going to be a big change here. A good change. He was right to come here. Grasshopper immediately broke into a big smile. As long as Yanjiao was fine, he was happy. Their life here was much better than when they were on the other side of the sea. As he was thinking, a Yanjiao warrior hurried over and handed a scroll to EC. The head elder gave this to you. After handing the scroll to EC, the warrior hurriedly left and ran towards the Flaming River Castle. EC gave Grasshopper a look. Grasshopper quickly walked to the door and guarded it. He didn't want anyone to have a chance to sneak in and peek at the scroll. After opening the scroll, EC raised his eyebrows. He closed the scroll and said, Grasshopper, close the door. We have important things to do. This is our chance to prove our worth. Grasshopper's expression immediately turned serious. He was just a follower. His quality of life was closely related to EC. It was obvious that Yanjiao had a mission for EC. If EC completed the mission well, he would definitely be treated well. As a follower, he would naturally have a better life. While EC was completing the mission given to him by the head elder, no one was allowed to come in and disturb them. Anyone who came in and disturbed them would be going against them. Grasshopper's eyes were filled with murderous intent. No one was allowed to come in during this period. He would tear apart anyone who made things difficult for them. Gradually, everyone in the trading point noticed a strange atmosphere. Even some of the tribesmen who had just arrived felt that something was brewing and was about to break out of the ground. They continued to wait anxiously and uneasily. This was because Yanjiao's higher-ups, those above the team leader, had not appeared in the trading point for 3 days straight. They refused to meet with them. While everyone was speculating, Yanjiao announced a big announcement. Yanjiao would establish a great alliance in the Flaming River Valley. They would establish a new order here. Anyone who was willing to follow the new order of the alliance could join the alliance. Yanjiao's current chief, Gigu, current shaman, Guizhe, and head elder, Xian, jointly issued the first Flaming River Gathering Order. The chiefs of the tribes in the Flaming River Valley who were willing to follow the new order and join the alliance could head to the Flaming River Trading Point to participate in the Great Alliance Banquet. The order explained the new order in detail. Yanjiao would naturally play the role of leader in this alliance. Anyone who wasn't willing could step forward and settle it with force. Of course, no one would be stupid enough to step forward at a time like this. The tribesmen who came to the trading point for various reasons hurriedly left the trading point after hearing the contents of the order. They had to inform their own tribes of this important news. Zhang Luo stood on top of the Flaming River Tower as he listened to the reports from the people at the entrance of the trading point. He looked at the figures running quickly in the distance and asked Xian, "Can the Great Alliance really develop as expected?" "That depends on how many tribes are willing to join," Xian said as he looked at the animal skin scroll in his hand. Xian was holding a curved line on the animal skin scroll. That was a section of the Flaming River, which was also the section they knew of so far. On this line, there were no tributaries for the time being. But soon, Xian believed that there would be more and more lines on this animal skin roll, just like the roots of a tree. The roots would grow longer and longer, and the branches would grow more and more. The drumming tribe. Abuli looked at the order he had just received and studied it carefully. In the end, he still didn't quite understand it. He knew that the Flaming Horns wanted to gather everyone together, but he couldn't guess the deeper meaning behind it. As for the new order mentioned in the order, he actually didn't have any objections. As long as it didn't harm the tribe's interests, he was willing to accept anything that was beneficial to them. To put it simply, Abuli's current mentality was to cling onto Yanjiao's thick thighs. He wouldn't lose anything anyway. At least after coming into contact with Yanjiao, their tribe's lives were getting better and better. There was no doubt about that. "I want to go to Yanjiao for the banquet. Who wants to?" Before Abuli could finish, the crowd around him exploded. Me. Bring me along. Chief, look at me. Look at my feet, they're so big. How can you not bring me along?" Abuli saw that many people were already standing upside down and fighting with their feet. He snorted. He still remembered the first time he said he wanted to go to Yanjiao. Many people objected and didn't want to go. But now, they were all so enthusiastic that they even fought with their feet for a spot. At a certain section of the Flaming River, on a mountain some distance away from the Flaming River, a group of people gathered at the entrance of a cave. Flaming River Basin? Chief, are we part of the Flaming River Basin? Someone asked anxiously. They just found out that the river was called the Flaming River not long ago, and their tribe wasn't close to the river. He was worried that Yanjiao's Flaming River Basin didn't include their tribe. The person standing at the entrance of the cave carefully held a scroll. His eyes were filled with doubt. After carefully studying the few sentences on the scroll, he comforted himself. The Flaming River Basin doesn't just refer to the main stream. There are tributaries too. We're very close to one of the tributaries, so we should be part of the Flaming River Basin. Yes, we definitely are. Let's pack up and get ready to go to the Flaming River trading point. Who wants to go with me? Me. Chief, I'll go. I'm strong. I can run fast. I haven't been upstream yet. What do the Yanjiao people look like? I don't know. I heard from the Ya people that the Yanjiao people look like fearsome beasts. Really? I want to know how many tribes have joined us. Not many, right? I don't know many tribes either. That's because you don't know. There must be many more. What's with the noise? We'll know when we get there. The chief who shouted carefully put away the scroll in his hand, then turned around and went into the cave to pack his things. He hadn't traveled far for many years, so he was quite nervous. However, the Yanjiao people were right. A small tribe couldn't face the coming attack alone. One of the words, "fight the enemy together," was enough to tempt him. Chapter 776. This was the first time Yanjiao publicly announced a gathering of tribes. This time, the tribes in the central region were not included. This was different from the grand banquet when the Flaming River trading point was first established. This gathering would have a huge impact on the Flaming River Basin. All the tribes living in the Flaming River Basin, regardless of whether they were willing to join the Great Alliance or not, would not be able to change the current situation. The Flaming River Basin was about to undergo a huge change. Some people were happy while others were worried. The people in Yanjiao, especially the higher-ups, had not slept well for the past few days. What could they do? They were under a lot of pressure. If only a few tribes were willing to join the gathering, wouldn't that be embarrassing? That was why everyone, including Gigu, was worried. Only Xiao was still doing what he was supposed to do. Boss, how many tribes do you think will come? Duo Kong stood at the top of the Flaming River Tower, the tallest building in the trading point. He stood under the flag with the Yanjiao totem on it and looked at the sparsely populated trading point. He could not hide his nervousness. Zhang Luo sighed and looked outside the trading point. I don't know. At least 10? Duo Kong counted with his fingers. The Rain tribe, the Taiha tribe, the Drumming tribe, and the Lu tribe, who had just arrived, would definitely not refuse to join the alliance. As for the Pu tribe, the Drumming tribe, the Ya tribe, the Drumming tribe, and the others, Duo Kong didn't know much about them. There were also tribes further away and those who came from Yinghai. They had no choice but to come to Yanjiao for the first time. Even if many of them were unwilling, there should be at least 1 or 2 tribes who were willing to join the Great Alliance, right? 10 there should be. Duo Kong encouraged himself in his heart. After convincing himself, he felt a little more confident. When they first learned of Gue He and Xiao Xian's plan, they were also quite surprised. The scenario that Xiao Xian described was what they wanted to see, but after all, it was just a fantasy that had yet to happen. As for the outcome, they could only wait and see. We haven't heard the horn today. Zhang Luo looked at the setting sun and sighed. It's still early. It should sound in a few days, Duo Kong said hesitantly. After leaving the Flaming River Tower, Zhang Luo walked out of the trading point. There were 3 gates to the trading point. After the order was issued, one of the gates was remodeled and became the largest of the 3 gates. The 2 sides of the door were built with huge stones, which were then carved into the shape of 2 huge beast heads. The ratio was almost 1 to 1. Of these 2 types of dire beasts, one was a carnivorous giant dire beast, and the other was a herbivorous giant dire beast. The former had the sharp fangs of the carnivorous dire beasts, while the latter had some huge hard horns. They were both among the top dire beasts in the forest, and were not easy to hunt. Every time such dire beasts were hunted, it required a planned encirclement and teamwork. This time, when they remodeled the gates to the trading point, they made the design of 2 dire beasts. Although the dire beasts' heads were carved out of stone, the fangs and horns embedded in the statues were genuine. They were the treasures the tribe had collected over the years. This time, they used them to build the walls. The carvings of the 2 dire beasts' heads were not very detailed. Many parts were not smooth and had a rough feel, but it was enough to let people see the general shape of the 2 dire beasts' heads. Also, because it was not detailed enough, the rough parts added a rough, wild, and mysterious feeling to the statues. The stones used to make the dire beasts' heads were above average. This time, Yan Jiao had invested a lot. It was no wonder that Zhang Luo and the rest were nervous and felt pressured. This gate was the largest gate in the trading point, and it was also the gate that Yan Jiao had invested the most. The Yan Jiao people called this gate the Beast Head Gate. The horn that Zhang Luo mentioned before was the horn that was placed in the 2 dire beasts' heads. If the people guarding this gate discovered that a tribe had responded to the summons, they would blow the horn to let others know that a tribe had arrived. Unfortunately, they had not heard a single sound of the horn. The drumming tribe, Taiha tribe, Rain tribe and Lu tribe didn't come immediately because they were very close to the Flaming Horn tribe. When the Flaming Horn tribe said the feast would start, they would come immediately. They had already made their stance clear. It didn't matter if they came early or late. That was why the Flaming Horn tribe was mainly waiting for the tribes that were further away. Looking at the Beast Head Gate, Zhang Luo asked the guards, "Have you seen the Grand Elder?" "I think he's over there." A guard pointed in a direction. Zhang Luo walked in that direction. That was where the King Stoneworm used to live. Yan Jiao had claimed the land but had not started construction yet. Their original plan was to expand the trading point and connect it to the other side. However, they did not have enough people. Now that the trading point was big enough to accommodate everyone here, they did not need the other side. When Zhang Luo saw Xiao Xian was sitting in the stone forest. He was holding an animal skin scroll and drawing something on it. Zhang Luo went over to take a look but did not understand. "What are you drawing?" asked Zhang Luo. "A design." Xian put down the pen in his hand and moved his stiff neck. He had been sitting here for a whole day. "A design? You plan to expand the trading point?" Zhang Luo was shocked. If it wasn't for expansion, what was the point of drawing a design? Maybe it's time to expand. Xian stood up from a rock. "But you said before that we don't have many people. We don't need this place for now." "There will be more soon," said Xian. Zhang Luo understood what Xian meant by "there will be more soon." "You're so optimistic about this gathering?" Seeing Xian's calm demeanor, Zhang Luo felt a little more confident. Originally, he came to Xian to ask Xian to use not divination, but now it seemed that there was no need. Xian had already expressed his opinion. After thinking it through, Zhang Luo felt the pressure on him lessen. Since Xian was so confident, he would wait a little longer. Xian was optimistic about this gathering because of his intuition and because he had already sent the people to spread the news. Most of the tribes in the Flaming River region didn't like foreign tribesmen, but they didn't have enough power. They hadn't come up with a plan yet because of the lack of information. What Xian asked the tribesmen to deliver wasn't just a message, but also a message to let them know that the invaders were stronger and more ambitious. There were a lot of them too. Small tribes had to unite to have a better chance of survival. The Flaming Horns tribe was like a core, and the other tribes gathered around this core. If it weren't for the foreshadowing and the threat of the foreign tribesmen, Xian didn't know how the other tribes would react. What was done was done. All that was left was to wait. At the trading point, after Zhang Luo left, the Yanjiao warriors guarding the Beast Head Gate were also discussing and guessing how many people would come. Every time the horn sounded, a tribe would come. That was why even if they weren't on duty, they could still hear the horn. "How many tribes do you think will come?" 5. "Bullshit. There are already 4 tribes around here. It's definitely more than 5. 7. 9. I'm guessing 10. I'm guessing 20. Definitely not 20. I'm guessing 15. The Yanjiao tribesmen weren't the only ones discussing this. The expedition teams that came to the Flaming River trading point were also discussing this. Many of them had already completed their trade and should have left long ago. Who knew that Yanjiao would send out a call to form an alliance? When they heard this, their curiosity was piqued and they decided to stay for a few more days to see how effective Yanjiao's call would be. Many of them wanted to make fun of themselves. Of course, most of them wanted to join in the fun. Let's bet. Let's guess how many tribes will come. I'm betting under 10. I'm betting under 10 too. I'm betting on Yanjiao. I'm betting under 15. I'm betting 20. 20? Are you crazy? I think Yanjiao is so strong. There will definitely be many tribes coming. The person who bet 20 had a serious expression on his face and said confidently, "Bootlicker." The others cursed in their hearts. He knew that there were Yanjiao tribesmen watching him, so he said that on purpose. If not, why would he only bet 1 beast tooth? If he was so confident, why didn't he bet 10 beast teeth and 20 beast hides? The outsiders and Yanjiao tribesmen who stayed in the trading point were all ears, waiting for the horn to sound. Unfortunately, the horn didn't sound for a few days. However, some tribes were far away, so they wouldn't be able to get here so quickly. Plus, this was a big deal, so they had to discuss it. But as the days passed, the horn still remained silent. It wasn't until the 7th day that the drumming tribe arrived that the horn sounded for the first time. Then on the 10th day, the chief of the Ya tribe brought 100 Ya tribesmen out of the underground tunnel and entered the trading point. The horn sounded for the 2nd time. On the 15th day, the drumming tribe and Jing tribe arrived at the trading point together. The horn at the 2-headed beast gate sounded twice. After the 15th day, the horn sounded more frequently in the following days. Not only would it sound every day, but it would also sound several times in a row. After all, some of the smaller tribes were already in contact with each other, so it was safer to travel together. There were more tribes in the Flaming River Basin. The number of tribes that were willing to follow the new order and join the Great Alliance continued to increase. Perhaps some were still observing, but some had already started to take action. On this day, Xueqi walked out of the stone forest. The man-made river that was dug out surrounded the stone forest and the trading point. This river not only solved the problem of ships not being able to pass through the Flaming River Bridge, but it also formed a line of defense. Every day before the sky turned dark, the suspension bridge would be closed to stop people from entering this area. Therefore, if anyone needed to cross the river, they had to do it before the sun rose. When Xueqi walked across the river from the suspension bridge, he saw some greenish-black figures with protruding bones on the surface of the river. The water rippled as the figures swam. These were the fish that the Dishan tribe gave to Xueqi. After Xueqi threw them into the river, he didn't care about them anymore. He left the trading point and went to the Lu tribe. When he came back, these fish were already as long as an arm. Their growth speed was astonishing. According to the patrolling warriors, the pterosaur had been feeding these fish, and it was still doing so. Xueqi didn't know what the pterosaur wanted to do, but as long as it didn't want to eat the fish, it was fine. He could help raise the fish. Woo! The low sound of the horn pierced through the clouds and reverberated throughout the forest. Xueqi looked towards the trading point. Another tribe had arrived at the trading point. They didn't use the suspension bridge, so they must have come directly from the Flaming River using boats. More and more tribes arrived over the past few days. Zheng Luo and the rest felt more at ease. There were already more than 10 tribes here, which was more than they expected. Now, they just had to continue waiting. The tribes further away might need a few more days to arrive. Xueqi didn't look at the trading point again. After he left the river, he walked around and observed the terrain. He wanted to see if he needed to add more defensive measures. We should cut down some trees. It'll block the view of the people on the other side of the river. As he thought, Xueqi suddenly stopped and looked towards the forest not far away. There were people coming over. There were quite a few of them. Rustle. The sound of their bodies brushing against the branches and grass wasn't loud. It was obvious that the other party had purposely held back and was very cautious. Thud, thud, thud. There was the sound of hard objects hitting each other. It sounded like some kind of bone ornament. Xueqi stood there without moving. He didn't try to hide himself either. The other party must have noticed him. That was why the person walking in front paused for a moment. Soon, the people walked out from the forest. Their clothes were mainly made of animal skin, and there were many bone ornaments. Especially the leader, he had a lot of animal teeth and bone ornaments hanging from his head to his feet. According to the habits of most tribesmen, This should be considered a grand dress. Xiao Xian looked at the people in the group. They were all young and strong, all totemic warriors. Regardless of gender, they all had a sharp aura around them. This was a tribe that was good at fighting. Who are you? One of the people in the group took 2 steps forward and stared at Xiao Xian cautiously. The leader only turned his head slightly, his sharp eyes casually sweeping across the group, stopping the others who were about to speak. His arm seemed to be raised casually, but it was like a city wall, stopping the people in the group who were about to step forward. A traveler? Or a tribesman who answered the summons? The leader asked in a deep voice. Xiao Xian was about to answer when he frowned and turned to look in another direction. Someone else was coming. Bang! The person who asked the question just now stepped on the ground and his aura increased. His animal skin clothes flapped in the wind. Originally, the clothes were loose, but with the appearance of the totem patterns and the continuous increase of the totem power, his body swelled, and the animal skin clothes became tight. When he waved his arms, the airflow made a whooshing sound, like the whistling of the winter wind, biting cold and full of a murderous aura. After that person, the others in the group also activated their totemic power and looked in the same direction cautiously. Soon, another group of people appeared in that direction. The person walking in front looked at the group not far away and sneered. Thunder Mountain Tribe? I didn't expect you to come too. Drumming Tribe. What are you doing here? The Thunder Mountain Chief's tone was very bad. It was obvious that the relationship between the two parties wasn't very good. Same as you, of course. The drumming chief's eyes flashed coldly. Xiao Xian, who was standing there, was ignored by both sides. Chapter 777. Without waiting for Xiao Xian to ask anything, the two sides were already prepared to fight, with the leaders of both sides taking the lead. Less than half a minute had passed since the two sides had met. The first team that appeared emitted a fierce hostility. With the eruption of their totemic power, their momentum instantly rose like a frenzied beast. The leader's totemic power was circulating at a high speed. Under the continuous eruption, his momentum burst forth again. His arm, which had already grown thicker, seemed to be inflated again. In the blink of an eye, it doubled in size. He did not grow any taller, but he looked like a powerful beast. His arms were so thick that even EC's half-beast slaves might not be able to compare to them. His fist, which was much larger than a normal person's, rumbled like thunder. The wind from his fist made the bone ornaments on the man's body crackle, as if a thunderstorm was about to descend after a muffled thunder. If this punch landed, even a mountain rock would be blown apart. If a normal person was hit by this punch, even if they did not die, they would lose half of their life. The second team that appeared did not show a trace of surprise or fear in the face of such a ferocious battle formation. They seemed to have expected this, and their fighting spirit rose. Their bodies did not look as strong as their opponents. At this time, their opponents had changed because of their totemic power. One of them could fit 2 or 3 of them. However, they did not rely on their strong bodies, but on the sharp weapons in their hands. Horns, bones, or stone tools were polished into curved knives. Some were even directly connected to handles of different lengths. There were still traces of blood on the edges of the blades that had not yet dried up. These were the traces left behind by the trouble they had dealt with on their way here. The leader of the second team held a scimitar polished from a beast's tooth. He rushed out like lightning, his body suddenly bouncing up, with a kind of domineering momentum. The scimitar in his hand was like a fierce beast opening its fangs, rushing towards the leader of the other team. The strong wind that was stirred up carried a sense of ruthlessness. When their leader started fighting, the people in both teams also rushed out after them. The nearby flocks of birds flew away in fright, and the falling leaves were blown away by the wind. The battle was about to start. Xiao Xian looked at the scene in front of him. He didn't expect the two sides to start fighting so soon. Did they not know where they were? Although this place wasn't within Yanjiao's territory, it wasn't too far away. If a fight really broke out, it would definitely cause quite a commotion. Yanjiao had just sent out the order, and the League of Legends hadn't been established yet. If the people who came over started fighting before they even entered the trading area, what would the people who were waiting to see a joke think? Perhaps he would gloat even more. Look, those tribesmen start fighting as soon as they see each other. Is this how the Great Alliance is? Could it be built? What would the tribes that responded to the summons think when faced with such a situation? He didn't have time to think too much. The totem power burst out from his body. Xiao Xian's figure flashed and disappeared. Originally, in this area at this time, the people with the strongest aura were naturally the leaders of both teams. But just as they were about to start fighting, an even stronger and fiercer aura suddenly rose. It was as if a hurricane had suddenly raised an even higher wave in the middle of the sea. It directly suppressed the strong aura from before. This sudden aura was like a giant beast deep in the mountains. It forcibly broke the atmosphere created by the two of them. In the air, the turbulent air currents collided with each other, creating a series of explosions. Countless waves of air blasted outwards. Bang! The muffled sound of the collision was sharp and piercing to the ears. The man with bone ornaments all over his body had a huge fist that could shatter mountains, but it was blocked by a palm. It was as if he had met a huge mountain. He couldn't move forward. He looked at the palm that blocked his fist and saw an arm covered with totem patterns. The totem patterns seemed to have a life of their own as they flowed. Among the flame-like patterns, there were some crimson flames coming out of them. Streams of air that could be seen with the naked eye erupted from the pores of the arm. It was as if the blood in the arm under the skin was being boiled by the flames. The surrounding temperature was also raised. The flames around the arm were like fire snakes moving at high speed, tearing apart the aura they had accumulated. On the other side, the beast tooth knife that was supposed to strike was blocked by a metal weapon that flashed with cold light. The ear-piercing sound just now was the sound of the beast tooth knife scraping against the body of the knife. Xiao Xian didn't care what the two of them were thinking. After blocking both sides, his body flashed. His feet didn't move from the spot. Then, without any rest, he shook his shoulders and used his strength to shake out his arms. Chi! Whether it was the man with the beast tooth knife or the man with the bone ornaments, they all felt as if they had been hit by a ferocious beast head-on. The strong force pushed them out. Their feet dug up the grass on the ground, creating a ditch that was more than 10 meters long. If it weren't for the others holding on to them, the ditch would have been even longer. The man with the bone ornaments pushed away the person who was holding him. He felt pain all over his body. The blood in his chest was boiling, as if he had just been hit with a sledgehammer. He could even smell the sweet smell of blood when he breathed, especially the arm that had just been thrown out. Other than the pain, he couldn't feel anything else. He had temporarily lost all feeling. However, he couldn't care less about the injury on his arm. He looked at the person who had suddenly appeared in front of him in shock. The man with the beast tooth knife who had been bounced away wasn't any better. His arms and legs were still numb. Especially after the shock, his whole body felt like it was going to fall apart. There was a scorching heat under his palm. The place that was pressed against the beast tooth knife was burning with pain. No one knew better than him how much strength he had put into that strike. Even so, it was still easily blocked. The high temperature caused by the friction between the knife and the metal object in the man's hand told him that everything that had just happened wasn't an illusion. His heart was in turmoil because of the sudden accident. He stared at Xiao Xian with his eyes wide open, but he couldn't say a word. Who was this person? Everyone who had seen what had just happened was shocked. They were frozen in their attacking positions. They had thought that it was just an insignificant person. They hadn't expected such a thing to happen. They knew very well how powerful their leader was. Even so, not only had his attack been blocked, but he had also been forcefully pushed away. Looking at the ditch on the ground where the grass had been shoveled away, and then looking at the person who was standing there unharmed, everyone felt a chill run down their spine. They were terrified. "Who are you?" the man with the bone ornaments asked doubtfully. "Yan Jiao." The drumming chief didn't blink. The shock in his eyes was gone, and there was no anger. Instead, there was a trace of excitement. "Yan Jiao." Hearing the drumming chief's words, the others were shocked. They carefully looked at Xiao Xian. They had thought that he was just an insignificant passerby, so they didn't pay much attention to him. Now that they knew he was a Yanjiao man, they naturally had to take a closer look. This was a Yanjiao man? Why was he so different from what they knew? Didn't they say that Yanjiao people looked like fearsome beasts? That wasn't right. Perhaps Yanjiao people didn't look like fearsome beasts, but were more like fearsome beasts in other aspects. They could tell that just by looking at how he had blocked the two leaders. Were Yanjiao people really that strong? Xiao Xian withdrew his hand. Seeing that both sides had calmed down, he calmed the totemic power in his body. The totemic patterns dissipated, and the flames around his body disappeared. "Yanjiao Xiao Xian. Who are you?" Xiao Xian looked at the two groups of people. They had totemic patterns on their bodies that represented their tribes. However, Xueqi had never seen these two totemic patterns before. In other words, it was very likely that these two tribes were here for the first time. The drumming chief quickly shook his hands behind his back to get rid of the numbness from before. His gloomy face revealed a surprised smile. "You're Xueqi? Yanjiao's great elder, Xueqi." Great elder. The Thunder Mountain chief looked at Xueqi. He had regained some feeling in his arms, but the pain from before was still clear. "You're Yanjiao's great elder?" The Thunder Mountain chief asked again in disbelief. Even the other Thunder Mountain tribesmen behind him opened their mouths wide. "That's right, I am." Xueqi nodded, then looked at the two leaders of the two groups. The leader of the drumming tribe reacted quickly. He sheathed his scimitar and walked toward Xueqi. "The drumming tribe's chief, Xueqi, has answered the summons with the drumming tribe." Xueqi's eyes shone with excitement. He treated different people differently. If the person he was facing was weak, he would never treat them so warmly. Plus, they were here for the Yanjiao tribe. He was relieved that he didn't do anything to offend this person. As expected, a tribe that had the guts to send out a summons was very powerful. He had heard of this grand elder from the Ya tribesmen. The Ya tribesmen once told him that it was fine if he didn't remember the other Flaming Horn's names, but he had to remember Xueqi's name. Xueqi looked at the stunned Thunder Mountain tribesmen and sneered in his heart. As expected, they were a bunch of brainless idiots. He remembered that when they arrived, the atmosphere between the Thunder Mountain tribesmen and Yanjiao's great elder wasn't very good. They answered the summons but didn't gather any information. They didn't even know who this person was, let alone answer the summons. The leader of the Thunder Mountain tribesmen came back to his senses. He calmed himself down and said, "The Thunder Mountain tribe's chief, Lu Zhai, has answered the summons with the Thunder Mountain tribesmen." The drumming tribe and the Thunder Mountain tribe? Xueqi looked at the two groups. Both sides only brought about 100 people. Xueqi's gaze made the Thunder Mountain tribesmen's hearts skip a beat. They were afraid that this person would hold a grudge against them because of their bad attitude. They heard that many large tribes would start a fight without saying anything. However, Xueqi's next words made them heave a sigh of relief. "The sun has already set, and the drums have already sounded once. When the drums sound for the third time, the sky will be dark. Then, you won't be able to cross the river or enter the trading point tonight." Xueqi pointed in a direction. "Head this way and you'll see a suspension bridge. You can cross the river from there." As he spoke, a few muffled drum beats that sounded like the roars of wild beasts sounded again. This was the second time. Xueqi originally wanted to chat with this Yanjiao's great elder a little longer, but now he had no choice but to stop talking. Their journey was more important. They didn't want to spend the night here. They didn't know how many people were watching them. This was their first time in Yanjiao's territory, so they weren't familiar with the roads. However, Xueqi had already pointed them in the right direction. They just had to walk in that direction. "Thank you." After Xueqi thanked him, he didn't waste any more time and quickly led his men in that direction. The Thunder Mountain tribesmen didn't want to be left behind. After thanking Xueqi led his men and chased after them. On the way, Xueqi thought about many things. When they first heard Yanjiao's order to gather all the tribes, their first thought was, of course, dissatisfaction. They agreed to unite all the tribes to fight against the invaders, but they had different opinions about who should be the leader. Before this, they only knew about Yanjiao from the Ya tribesmen and the nearby tribes. Their understanding of Yanjiao was too vague. Since the Ya tribesmen always liked to exaggerate, they would always try to suppress what they heard. They always thought that the Ya tribesmen were exaggerating, but what happened just now proved that the Ya tribesmen were telling the truth. Even if not all of the Ya tribesmen's stories were accurate, most of them were true. However, Yanjiao's great elder was really surprising. When the drum beat sounded for the third time in the Flaming River trading point, the suspension bridge at the man-made river was retracted. The Thunder Mountain and Ji tribesmen had already crossed the bridge. "Chief, was that really Yanjiao's great elder?" someone asked from the Thunder Mountain tribesmen. "Who else do you think it was?" Xueqi asked. "It has to be. Not just anyone can block your punch. It has to be Yanjiao's great elder. It has to be." "No, I'm not talking about his strength. I can't deny that he's very strong, but an elder? Or a great elder? Yanjiao's great elder is actually a young man. He looks younger than me," said a young man in the group. He was considered one of the more outstanding members of the younger generation in the tribe, but he still couldn't compare to the chief. However, that person just now easily blocked the chief's attack. Even if the chief didn't use his full strength, not just anyone could block that punch, let alone take it head-on. The chief was even sent flying. Let's not talk about Yan Jiao's great elder. What do you think about the Yan Jiao guards at the suspension bridge? Xiaidu asked. Even though those guards aren't as strong as Yan Jiao's great elder, they don't look weak either. I heard they hunt fearsome beasts for a living. Difference. This was the first time they realized the difference between them and the Yan Jiao tribe. The Thunder Mountain tribesmen weren't the only ones who thought this way. The Ji tribesmen felt the same way too, but Xiaidu was a little more thoughtful. He reminded the people in the group what to say when they entered the trading point and what to keep to themselves. Needless to say, Xiao Xian's appearance scared Xiaidu out of his wits. After the Flaming River trading point's drum sounded for the third time, the people in the trading point were ready to rest. The sun had completely set and night had arrived. They gathered in groups of 3 to 5 to discuss the tribes that had answered the call today. After that, they went back to their own places, thinking about how many tribes would come tomorrow. There were already 18 tribes. No one expected so many tribes to answer the summons. Even if they didn't think highly of some of the tribes, they were still tribes. One tribe wasn't good enough, but many of them were still impressive. At the trading point, at the entrance of the Beast Head Gate, under the guidance of the guards, the drumming tribesmen who arrived first came to a 2-meter tall and 10-meter long stone tablet. There were some words and pictures on the tablet. These were the names and totems of the tribes that had answered the summons. There were also the signatures of the people who had written these words. All of them were the names of the chiefs of these tribes. Xiaidu had never heard of many of these tribes and had never seen their totems before. He didn't know there were so many tribes living by the Flaming River. Perhaps he didn't remember the names, but he still remembered the totems. Tribesmen had a deeper memory of totems than tribe names, so they were sure they had never heard of or seen half of these tribes. Taking the paint and pen from the guard, Xingdu drew the totem of the drumming tribe at the position of the 19th square on the stone tablet, and wrote the word drumming on it seriously. He felt that other than the time he took over as chief, this was the second time he had to draw and write so seriously. He was sweating profusely after he finished writing each word. After the totem and tribe names, Xiaidu took a deep breath and wrote his own name, then pressed a palm print on the tablet. Looking at the words in palm print, Xiaidu felt that his arm was still numb from being blocked by the Yanjiao Grand Elder. He wasn't in a good state, so he wasn't satisfied with his drawing. "Can I rewrite it?" Xiaidu asked. The Yanjiao warrior beside him was about to say something, but another voice interrupted. "Of course not. Get out of my way." Lu Zhai, the chief of the Thunder Mountain tribe, came over and pushed Xiaidu to the side. He took another brush from the Yanjiao guard. Xiaidu took a deep breath. If it wasn't for the fact that he didn't dare to do anything in Yanjiao territory, he would definitely fight with Lu Zhai for his actions. However, after Lu Zhai finished writing, Xiaidu's mood improved a lot. Not to mention the fact that the Thunder Mountain tribe was ranked behind the drumming tribe. Even Lu Zhai's writing wasn't as good as his. Although Lu Zhai looked serious, his hands were trembling from nervousness. His writing wasn't up to standard. It was fine when he was writing his tribe's name, but when he was writing his own name, his hand trembled and the lines that should have been smooth became wavy. Lu Zhai was speechless. Xiaidu tried his best to hold back his laughter. If it wasn't for the fact that this place wasn't suitable, he would have laughed loudly. "Idiot, you can't even write properly. What are you going to use to compete with me?" In this aspect, the drumming tribe was still better. Lu Zhai looked at the words on the tablet and his expression changed. He asked the Yanjiao guard with a stiff face, "Can I rewrite it?" "No. Remember what you said just now." Xiaidu took the brush from Lu Zhai's hand and handed it to the Yanjiao guard. Woo woo. The horn of the Beast Head Gate sounded. The people in the trading point were already preparing to rest, but they didn't expect to hear the horn again. One by one, the travelers got up from their beds and opened their windows to look outside. "It's the horn of the Beast Head Gate. That's right. It's from that side." They had been hearing the horn every day recently, so they naturally recognized the horn of the Beast Head Gate. 19 tribe. I don't know which tribe it is. Quick, quick. Let's go to the main street. Before they could make a move, Another bugle horn was blown. Woo, it sounded again. It's another 2 tribes in a row. 20. 20 tribes. Ha 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 ha. I won my bet. I won. The traveler who had bet 20 laughed loudly. You're celebrating too early. It's not over yet. There will definitely be more tribes coming tomorrow. If there are more than 20 tribes, you'll lose just like us. I didn't expect so many tribes to come. I wonder if the tribes coming this time are weak. Quick, quick, quick. Let's go to the main street, or there won't be any seats left. After entering the trading point from the Beast Head Gate, Xueqi and his group saw a clean and spacious road that had been smoothed out. Beside the road, there were many stone pillars with a water moonstone placed on top of each pillar. After the sun had set, the water moonstone shone brightly, illuminating the entire street like a white rope that led from the Beast Head Gate all the way to the Flaming River Castle. Is this the legendary Flaming River trading point? The people in the group were shocked by everything they saw, from the houses to the decorations. However, they didn't have time to admire the tall houses on both sides of the main street. The crowd that had gathered to watch the show had already made them nervous. People in the houses opened their windows and looked out. There was even a child leaning against the window, looking out curiously. Some people also gathered on the roof. So many people. The number of people on both sides of the street was already more than the total number of people in their tribe. Xueqi gripped his beast tooth knife tightly. He really wanted to kill someone. If they were outside, there would definitely be a fight to the death if so many people approached them. However, it was different now. The guards of the Flaming Horn tribe had already told them that large-scale fights were not allowed in the trading point. Also, as long as these tribes who were summoned walked on this street, the Flaming Horn tribe would not allow anyone to attack them. They looked at the people on both sides of the street. Although they were all looking at them with different intentions, no matter if it was good or bad, no one stepped onto this flat road. Hey! Over there, which tribe are you from? Yeah, which tribe are you from? The people who were watching the show asked. 2 short and fat figures squeezed out from the crowd. Their large faces squinted, and their beards that covered most of their faces twitched. It's the Drumming tribe. I can smell them. One of them said. There's also the Thunder Mountain tribe. That earthy smell is definitely from the Thunder Mountain tribe. The other person shouted. They're here too. Quick, tell the chief that the Drumming tribe and Thunder Mountain tribe are here. The 2 short and fat figures quickly disappeared from the crowd. One of them instinctively dug into the ground, but after a while, he realized that this was Yan Jiao's territory and he was not allowed to dig, so he got up and continued running. Drumming tribe? Thunder Mountain tribe? I've never heard of them, someone said. I've never heard of them either, but these 2 tribes seem more difficult to deal with than the tribes that came today. They have a lot of blood on them. There are already 20 tribes. I wonder if there will be 30 in a few days. Sigh, I really want to persuade our chief to move to the Flaming River Basin. The Great Alliance. I plan to go back and talk to our chief. If we want to move, why don't we move to the Flaming River Basin? The Flaming River Basin is still big anyway. We can still join the Great Alliance. Yes, 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 that's what I think too. Humans were social animals. Under the influence of the atmosphere, there was always a herd mentality. No matter what they thought or said when they first heard Yan Jiao's order, they were now starting to acknowledge Yan Jiao's Great Alliance. They even wanted to join it. This situation made both the Yan Jiao people and the tribes that came to the trading point to choose to join the Great Alliance. Chapter 778. After the Drumming tribe and Thunder Mountain tribe arrived, more tribes arrived every day. 21, 22, 25, 26. It was only until the 30th tribe arrived that there was a day where no one arrived. By now, 37 days had passed since the gathering order was sent out and the 30th tribe had arrived. Looks like we can start the gathering now. Zhang Luo stood on the rooftop of the Flaming River Tower and looked at the people walking around the trading point. He had told Xiao Xian that the space in the trading point was enough, but now it seemed like it wasn't. This was the first time the gathering order was sent out. So many tribes were still observing. They only sent people to the trading point to observe the situation. They didn't plan to come, but in a year or 2, it would be hard to say. There really wasn't enough space in the trading point. The 30 tribes had already settled down in 30 houses in the trading point. Occasionally, there would be conflicts, but the trading point had its own rules. The prerequisite for joining the Great Alliance was to follow the new rules. If a fight broke out in the trading point, then Yanjiao's patrols in the trading point would forcefully throw people out. After some discussion, Yanjiao decided to hold the gathering at the Flaming River Castle on the 40th day after the gathering order was sent out. 3 days before the gathering, 2 more tribes arrived at the trading point. They were too far away and had never traveled such a long distance before, so they took a long time to arrive. Woo! A long horn sounded in the trading point. It wasn't the same horn as the one at the Beast Head Gate. Compared to that, this horn was louder and lasted longer. This was the sound of the horn from the rooftop of the Flaming River Tower, telling everyone that the gathering was about to begin. An area in the trading point had already been cleared out when the gathering order was sent out. It was reserved for the tribesmen who answered the call. At this moment, after the horn sounded, people came out from the courtyards one after another, blocking the entire street. Teams with different attire patterns, height, weight, began to gather amidst the unique shouts and shouts. "We're leaving." Lu Zhai, the chief of the Thunder Mountain tribe, looked at the Flaming River Tower, then turned around and shouted into the courtyard. In the few days that they had been here, they had already figured out the way of life and the rules here. As long as they followed the rules, there would not be any major problems. The people and things here gave them a great shock. Everything in the trading zone told them that the Yanjiao people lived very well. Not to mention their strength, just the material standard of living far exceeded theirs. They didn't starve or suffer from the cold. He tidied up the bone ornaments on his body. Some of the bone ornaments were beast fangs, beast claws, and some were made from a strangely shaped bone from a ferocious beast. It could be said that these bone ornaments were the wearer's medals. Before he came here, Lu Zhai was still very confident. However, when he really entered the trading area and saw the fierce beast meat, beast fangs, and beast bones being sold, he really felt the difference. Even if Lu Zhai was confident in his own strength and the people in his tribe, wild beasts could not be compared to fearsome beasts. If possible, they would try to hunt more fearsome beasts. Looking at the animal teeth worn by the Yanjiao people, and then looking at the animal teeth on his body, he felt ashamed. When they arrived at the Beast Tooth Gate, this feeling of shame intensified. Lu Zhai wanted nothing more than to throw away all the bone ornaments on his body. Although he had seen the beast tooth of the Beast Tooth Gate on the second day he arrived at the trading point, he was not as embarrassed as he was now. There seemed to be many pairs of eyes looking at him from the front and back of the tribe. He could feel it even without looking at the Lu village. Although he was embarrassed, he still maintained a serious expression on his face. Taking a deep breath, Lu Zhai made a decision in his heart. Behind Lu Zhai, the other Thunder Mountain tribesmen who came with Lu Zhai paused for a few seconds at the Flaming River Castle's Beast Tooth Gate. If it wasn't for the people urging them from behind, they would have gone over to take a closer look at those giant beast teeth. They even wanted to touch them. It wasn't just jealousy or envy, it was a thirst for power. More than 30 tribes walked towards the Flaming River Castle after the horn sounded. Along the way, some tribes almost started fighting over who should go first. They couldn't fight here, so they had to compete with their aura. Those who lost would obediently scram to the back. Yanjiao wouldn't care about this kind of competition. Therefore, those who were good at fighting and looked strong won priority, such as the Thunder Mountain tribe, the Drumming tribe, and the Water Tiger tribe. Those who were more timid were naturally pushed to the back, such as the Drumming tribe, the Zutong tribe, and the others. The travelers in the trading point all climbed up to the roofs and craned their necks to look over. Seeing these groups walking towards the Flaming River Castle, they all wanted to follow in. Indeed, there were some who wanted to take advantage of the chaos to sneak in, but before they could even get close to the Flaming River Castle, they were discovered by a few tribes. They immediately surrounded them and beat them up. If they weren't worried about violating the rules of the Flaming River Castle, they would have already killed them. However, even if the person who tried to sneak in didn't die, he was beaten half to death and then thrown out like a sandbag. When the last tribe entered the Flaming River Castle, the thick stone door at the Beast Tooth Gate made a rumbling sound as it rubbed against the ground. Then, with a bang, it closed, cutting off the view of the people outside. The Flaming River Castle was the tallest building in the Flaming River trading point, so those who wanted to watch from the roofs could only give up. The chiefs or shamans of the 32 tribes brought different numbers of people, and even if they brought more people, they couldn't bring all of them into the Flaming River Castle. After all, there was limited space inside the Flaming River Castle. Therefore, other than the people who followed in, The rest of the people all stood guard outside the flaming river castle. Therefore, after the Beast Tooth Gate closed, other than the Yanjiao patrolling guards outside the flaming river castle, the tribesmen who didn't follow in all stood guard. Each tribe was responsible for one direction, and a few tribes seemed to have discussed this beforehand. They stood a certain distance away from each other and guarded their own area. When the others saw this, they followed suit. In the end, these people formed a circle around the flaming river castle, and also separated the people who were watching from the trading point. This made the people who were watching from the sidelines unhappy. Damn it, how can we eavesdrop from so far away? Their curiosity was like a cat's paw gently scratching their hearts. It was very itchy, but they couldn't do anything about it. They didn't belong to the Flaming River Alliance. While the people outside were discussing, the Flaming River Castle had already been divided into 32 areas. However, the seating arrangements were arbitrary. Yanjiao only guaranteed that every tribe had a place to sit. Other than the Drumming Tribe, the Rain Tribe, the Taiha Tribe, and the Drumming Tribe, the other tribes had to find their own seats. The Drumming Tribe, who were squeezed behind the group and had just entered the Beast Tooth Gate, straightened their backs. Look, their Drumming Tribe had already booked their own seats, unlike the other tribes who had to find their own seats. As expected, this was the advantage of riding on someone's coattails in advance. They could enjoy some benefits. Gigu, Zhang Luo, and the others looked at the tribes who came in. Some of these people had already started to work together and formed small groups, while others were still working alone. From these people's actions, they could roughly understand them. Which people were more aggressive, which people were more conservative, and which people were more sly. These could all be seen from their actions. When everyone who came in found their seats, they couldn't help but sigh as they looked at the different types of people inside. This is the Great Alliance? So many tribes. At first, they were still wary of the Flaming Horn Tribe, worried that the Flaming Horn Tribe would trap them here and destroy them. However, when they saw so many tribes here, including some that they were acquainted with, their worries gradually dissipated. Instead, they were filled with anticipation. The Great Alliance? So many tribes. Were they really going to unite? If that was really the case, it would indeed be a good thing for everyone. As they sighed, some people memorized every tribe they saw. Soon, they realized that one of the 32 seats was empty. Didn't they say there were 32? Yeah, I remember that we were the last one. I even counted on the stone tablet at the entrance. We were the last one, said someone from the Zhutong tribe. What about the last tribe? Other than Yanjiao, there are only 31 tribes here. Someone counted again. That's right, there were 31 tribes, one less. Could it be that they came and left? Some people wondered. In the midst of the discussion, someone looked at the Yanjiao chief sitting at the head of the table. Gigu looked at the empty seat at the end and frowned. He turned and asked Zhang Luo, "Who's the last one?" After he asked, Gigu suddenly remembered. That person, he's not here yet? Zhang Luo. Did he forget? I thought he didn't need to sleep? He probably forgot because he was thinking too much. Zhang Luo planned to send someone to find Gong Xie. If he didn't see him on the list, he would have forgotten about that person. These few days, he had been thinking about the tribes that answered the summons and neglected this dangerous person right under his nose. Also, he didn't expect Gong Xie to stand up for the entire tribe. As they were talking, a figure walked out from one of the doors in the Flaming River Castle. Because it was daytime, Gong Xie was still wearing a cloak and a hood that covered most of his face. All right, the last tribe is here too, Gigu said as he looked at Gong Xie. The last tribe? Where is it? Someone looked around. I don't see him. There's no one at the Beast Fong Gate. Hey, it can't be that person, right? Someone pointed at Gong Xie. Alone. While everyone was confused, Gong Xie walked in and said, Gong Xie of the Han tribe. I answered the summons and came here. Boom, everyone was shocked by Gong Xie's words, regardless of whether they were happy or angry about the competition. Han tribe? I've never heard of them. Alone. He came alone. Aren't they all chiefs or shamans? Is he the chief of the Han tribe? Gong Xie looked at the source of the loudest roar. Someone was yelling. Why are you here alone? Is there no one else in your tribe? Gong Xie walked over and stopped 5 meters away from the person. He looked down calmly at the person sitting on the animal skin cushion and said, I'm the only one in my tribe. Do you have a problem with that? The chief of the Water Tiger tribe was sneering at Gonqie, saying that there was no one else in the Han tribe. When he saw Gonqie walk over and look down on him, he felt provoked. The smile on his face immediately disappeared. He stood up and took a step forward. Looking at Gonqie, who was a head lower than him, he growled like a beast, "Are you talking to me?" Gonqie's expression didn't change. He didn't answer the other party's question. Instead, he repeated his words with the same tone. He didn't raise or lower his voice. "Do you have a problem with that?" Gonqie's attitude made the chief of the Water Tiger tribe furious. He was clearly looking down on him. The veins on the Water Tiger tribe's leader's forehead throbbed as he took a deep breath. His chest expanded as he took a deep breath. His eyes widened, and his pupils dilated several times. The muscles on his back and shoulders bulged, and his skin tightened, revealing his powerful muscles. He opened his arms to both sides, and his knuckles cracked. Green stripes covered his entire body. He took another step forward. The moment his feet touched the ground, there was a muffled thud. It didn't seem like he was just using brute force. His entire body moved like a fierce tiger. In the next moment, he appeared in front of Gonqie. The distance between the two of them was shortened from 5 meters to only 1 step. His round eyes glowed fiercely and his breath rushed to his throat. Roar! A tiger-like roar came out of his throat. The sound wave rushed towards Gonqie, who was standing in front of him. The people around them were also affected. Their clothes flapped in the wind. However, Gonqie's hood and cloak only moved slightly. The wind didn't even lift the hood, let alone the cloak. Seeing this, the chief of the Water Tiger tribe roared twice more. Each roar was louder than the last. It was so loud that everyone's eardrums felt like they were going to burst. The people around them covered their ears and retreated. However, after the 3 roars, even the slowest person realized that something was wrong. Gonqie's cloak and hood seemed to be stuck tightly to his body. Everyone else in the hall looked over. Some were weighing something, some were deep in thought, and some were just there to watch the show. The surroundings were silent. Only the heavy breathing of the chief could be heard. He felt the totemic power in his body circulating crazily after the 3 roars. The chief stared at Gonqie, who was still standing there. He wondered if he should roar a few more times. "Are you done roaring?" Gonqie raised his head slightly and asked calmly. It was as if the roars were just a joke and he wasn't affected at all. The Water Tiger chief didn't have time to think. In the next moment, he saw Gonqie's eyes turn blood red. The part of his face that wasn't covered by the hood was covered by some dense veins. Gonqie's legs didn't move, but his body leaned forward. A series of cracking sounds came from his back. His naturally hanging arms shook violently. 5 long, dark brown, knife-like claws pierced out from the tips of his fingers. His cloak fluttered, and the hood was lifted up. His white hair looked like the mane of an angry beast. He opened his mouth, and 2 fangs elongated. He let out a long roar. If the roar of the Water Tiger tribe's chief was like the roar of a tiger in the forest, then Gonqie's roar was like the roar of heaven and earth. It was like a blizzard, a tsunami, and a landslide. It was so powerful that it was suffocating. The surrounding air was distorted by this long howl. Boom! The stone table not far away was pushed back by the roaring wind. Bang! Bang! The pottery on the table cracked. Crack! Crack! Cracks appeared on the ground where Gonqie was standing. Countless small pieces shattered. Facing Gonqie at such a close distance, the Water Tiger chief felt as if an ancient beast that had just woken up was staring at him coldly. He had the urge to turn around and run away. His entire body was blown back by the wind. It wasn't that he wanted to retreat. He tried his best to stay where he was. His feet created 2 deep pits in the ground, but he was still pushed back by Gonqie. The biting cold aura around him instantly dissipated under Gonqie's roar. The Water Tiger tribe's chief roared 3 times. The first roar lasted around 10 seconds, and the third one lasted around 20 seconds. To the Water Tiger tribesmen who loved to roar, 10 seconds was already a long time. Roars of this level that lasted 20 seconds were very rare in the Water Tiger tribe. At that time, the Water Tiger tribesmen were proud of themselves. The Water Tiger tribesmen had been practicing roaring since they hadn't awakened their totemic powers. Roaring was also a form of combat. Every Water Tiger tribesman had astonishing lung capacity. They had always wanted to show off their skills here. However, reality slapped them in the face. Someone else's roar was even stronger than theirs. By the time Gon Chie's howl reached 20 seconds, the water tiger tribesmen were already in shock. By the time it reached 30 seconds, the water tiger tribesmen were already in a daze. However, Gon Chie didn't seem to have any intention of stopping. He was still going on. 40 seconds, 50 seconds. Gon Chie only stopped after a minute. He wasn't panting. His breathing wasn't even erratic. No. The water tiger tribesmen finally regained their senses from the shock. They looked at Gon Chie from head to toe. This person didn't seem to be breathing. His chest wasn't even moving up and down. For a moment, the water tiger tribesmen were as silent as cicadas in winter. Gon Chie's bloodshot eyes looked at the water tiger tribesman who had already taken a few steps back. The water tiger tribesman behind him shuddered. "Do you have any objections?" Gon Chie asked again in a calm voice. The water tiger tribesman's face twitched. His back was covered in cold sweat. It was as if the blood in his body had frozen. He paused for a moment before replying in a hoarse voice, "No." Gon Chie looked past the water tiger tribesman and looked at the water tiger tribesman behind him. "Do you have any objections?" "No. No." The water tiger tribesmen shook their heads vigorously. What a joke. Their chief had already lost. They didn't have the guts to go against this person. Gon Chie scanned the crowd again. "Do you have any objections?" "No. No. No objections." The tribesmen that Gon Chie scanned quickly expressed their opinions. Even Ci Du from the Ji tribe felt his scalp go numb when he looked into Gon Chie's bloodshot eyes. "Does anyone else have any objections?" Gon Chie scanned the crowd with his bloodshot eyes. Everyone who saw him couldn't help but look away. They didn't dare to look him in the eye. Even if they were far away, they could still feel the murderous aura emanating from those bloodshot eyes. They also noticed that the ground where Gon Chie was standing was slightly yellow. A layer of sand was blown up by the wind. Sand? There definitely wasn't any. The only explanation was that Gon Chie caused all of this. Seeing that no one spoke, Gon Chie pulled his hood over his head to block the sun. Then, he walked towards the Rain tribe. The location of the Rain tribe had been decided long ago. Gon Chie didn't ask Yan Jiao to reserve it for him. He didn't look at the Rain tribe. Instead, he looked at the Bow tribe who was sitting next to them. "I want this spot." His tone was as calm as ever. It was simple and he didn't say anything unnecessary, but it made people feel pressured. The chief of the Bow tribe swallowed his saliva and turned to look at the people behind him. Seeing that everyone was nodding their heads, he got up and moved aside. The other tribesmen didn't laugh at the Bow tribe's action. They would have done the same if they were in Gon Chie's shoes. Even though it was just a roar, it was enough to let them know how powerful this person was. Han tribe? At least they remembered that there was only one person in this tribe. And this person was terrifyingly powerful. They even had a feeling that even if they used all their strength, they might not be able to defeat him. Terrifying. Truly terrifying. He didn't seem human at all. Gon Chie of the Han tribe. They remembered him. Yang Sui's face was pale. His hands were trembling uncontrollably. It was him. Gon Chie of the Han tribe. The only living member of the Han tribe. He was just one person, but he gave Yang Sui a great sense of danger. At the same time, Yang Sui could tell that Gon Chie's gaze towards them wasn't what he expected. Although it wasn't good, there wasn't any strong killing intent. Instead, there was a sense of contempt and even disregard. Gon Chie looked down on the current Rain tribe. He felt that they were too weak and didn't deserve his attention. Yang Sui noticed Gon Chie's attitude and heaved a sigh of relief. It didn't matter if it was contempt or disregard, as long as he didn't intend to kill the Rain tribe. Moreover, since Gon Chie had chosen to join the Great Alliance that Yan Jiao had stopped, it meant that as long as the Great Alliance existed, as long as the Rain tribe was in the Great Alliance, as long as Gon Chie didn't leave the Great Alliance, they wouldn't have to fight him. The 32 tribes had all arrived and were seated. The shadow of an eagle flashed across the sky. A person descended from the sky and landed on the field. Bang! There was a muffled sound from the ground. "Sorry I'm late." Xiao Xian walked quickly towards Yan Jiao. Xiao Xian was called over because there was a problem in the forging room. Gigu and the others knew about this. Although the Great Alliance was important, they wouldn't ignore the situation in the forging room. "How is it?" Gigu asked in a low voice. "It's not a big problem. It's been solved," Xiao Xian said. "That's good." Yan Jiao was seated at the front. There were 3 seats facing the 32 tribes. They were for the current chief, the shaman, and Xian, the great elder. The 3 of them were here. Gigu looked at the 32 tribes and said, "Then, let the meeting officially begin." Chapter 779. Outside the flaming river castle, the onlookers who didn't know what was going on were discussing about the roars. Some of them were so wild that even the fearsome beasts couldn't stop them from thinking. The water tiger tribesmen could recognize their chief's roars. After hearing the first 3 roars, they could guess the situation their chief was in. It must have been someone provoking them, or their chief was trying to show off his power. However, the last roar was too loud. As a tribe that loved roaring, they knew this kind of roar very well. Even though they didn't know what was going on inside, one thing was for sure. Their chief had lost the battle just now. However, after that, there wasn't much movement inside. They could only hear some vague noises. If someone was shouting loudly, they could still hear it, but they couldn't hear anything else. As for the onlookers who were further away, they couldn't hear anything unless they had extremely good hearing. The people outside were making all sorts of guesses. Meanwhile, the people inside the flaming river castle were starting their first round of discussion. Yan Jiao didn't think that all the tribes that answered the summons were really willing to join the Great Alliance. In order to let everyone know more about the Great Alliance, Gigu explained the rules again. Those who broke the rules would be eliminated by the Great Alliance. Everyone who joined the Great Alliance had to contribute something. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to get help from other tribes in the Great Alliance. There was no such thing as a free meal in this world. There was no such thing as an ally who didn't do anything. Those tribes who can't do these things can leave now. Gigu looked at the 32 tribes in the square. When they received the summons from Yan Jiao, some of them didn't understand what was going on. They only rushed over to join the Great Alliance because their tribes were facing a threat. Now, after Gigu's explanation, some of them hesitated. Obviously, there were some things they didn't want to follow. They didn't even want to take the risk. If you don't leave now, it won't be so easy to leave in the future. You'll have to pay a higher price, Xian said. I have a question. The chief of the Zhutong tribe said, after joining the Great Alliance, will we be able to learn how to merge fire seeds? Of course. However, at the same time, if there are any tribes who want to leave the alliance after learning the method, I advise you to leave as soon as possible. The chief of the Zhutong tribe shook his head. I'm just trying to confirm the authenticity of this matter. I have no intention of withdrawing from the alliance. What Gigu had just said about the rules that the tribes in the Great Alliance had to follow were actually very beneficial to the people of the Zhutong tribe. Their Zhutong tribe was good at digging wells. In the future, if any tribe in the alliance needed to dig wells, they would have to pay a certain amount of remuneration. If they went back on their word or purposely paid a small amount of remuneration, then they would be criticized in the alliance meeting. Furthermore, the tribe that violated the rules would be punished accordingly. Gigu looked at the people present, and none of them backed out. These people had dared to come all the way here after careful consideration. Of course, they would not back out at this time. I have another document here that I would like to show everyone. Xian ordered his men to distribute 32 animal hide scrolls. This document lists the pros and cons. The document that Xian had given them was a statistical analysis. It pointed out the differences between merging fire seeds and not, as well as the differences between joining the Great Alliance and not joining the Great Alliance. The pros and cons were all listed, and there was even evidence and detailed analysis. At the end of the document, there was a conclusion. Xian had asked EC to do this analysis. If the analysis was accurate, then it would naturally be more comprehensive. Although EC rarely left the Flaming River trading point, he had gathered a lot of information. In addition to his statistical and analytical talents, this analysis was definitely something that no one else could do. It was convincing enough. EC did not know how to perform divination. He did not have the E family's divination talent, but he had strong analytical abilities. This ability was enough to make up for his inadequacies in divination. This was also why EC could always predict things that no one else could. It was all because of his analysis. Every chief placed great importance on the analysis on the animal hide scroll. They ignored the food on the table and began to read the scroll after wiping their hands. From time to time, they would communicate with the people around them. Most of the chiefs were literate. Those who were illiterate had people around them who were literate. It had to be said that the results of the analysis were very persuasive. Other than the analysis of resources, and strength, there was also the analysis of population. Every single one of these was extremely tempting. This calmed down some of the people who were originally nervous. There were also some people whose ambitions were aroused by some of the prospects described in the book. Since no one wants to back out, then we will have a further discussion later. Gigu asked Zhang Luo and Ao to stay here. He, Gue Zhe, Xiao Xian, and the chiefs of the 32 tribes entered the meeting room in the Flaming River Castle for a secret discussion. The discussion in this open-air meeting room was not confidential, so it was fine even if someone heard it. However, when it came to merging the Fire Seed and other matters of the Great Alliance, they had to take precautions to keep it a secret. With the foreshadowing and hearing that they were going to enter the meeting room in the Flaming River Castle for a secret discussion, the chiefs no longer felt uneasy. They asked their subordinates to wait outside while they followed the Yanjiao people into the meeting room. Inside the Flaming River Castle, a large meeting room had been set up. This was where the Yanjiao people used to meet. Now, it could accommodate 30 to 50 people. Xiao Xian took out a scroll with the main stream and tributaries of the Flaming River drawn on it. Unlike before, this scroll was bigger. Everyone in the meeting room could see it clearly. There were also 32 small dots on the map. Each dot represented the location of the tribes that answered the summons. Gongqie was an exception. He was directly in the Flaming River trading point. Xiao Xian explained his idea of dividing the regions according to the water system. If there were any problems in the future, they could solve it in their own regions. If they couldn't solve it, they could bring it to the Flaming River Castle. After Xiao Xian explained his idea of dividing the water system, the meeting room went into an uproar. Some people objected to Xiao Xian's idea of dividing the water system. 2 tribes that belonged to one of the tributaries even started to scold him. Those violent people are on the same side as them? I'm afraid I'll be strangled to death if I go over. Do you think I'm happy? You bunch of weaklings. I don't even want to talk to you. One complained that the other was too cowardly and only knew how to avoid trouble. The other one also disliked the other for being extremely stupid and only cared about charging forward. Although they argued fiercely, in the end, the division of the water system still grouped them together. The 2 tribes had been living together for many years. Although there were always small conflicts, there were never any major conflicts. There was always a reason for their long-term coexistence. However, when it came to the naming of the tributaries, the tribes that belonged to the same system started to argue again. They all wanted to add their own names or totems. The only ones who were quiet were the people from the main water system. On the main branch side, Yanjiao was the leader. The Taiha tribe, Drumming tribe, Rain tribe, Han tribe, Gongqie and the others, as well as the new Lu tribe, would all follow Yanjiao's idea. After settling the division of the water system, Xiao Xian told them about merging their fire seeds. He also wrote down the things they needed to pay attention to before merging their fire seeds and gave them to the tribes that hadn't merged their fire seeds yet. You can refer to what's written here. You can also ask the tribes that have merged their fire seeds, Xiao Xian said. Those who could understand it were studying it carefully, while those who couldn't carefully rolled up the animal skin scroll and put it away. When they left the trading point, they would bring it back to the shaman of the tribe. Others couldn't understand it, but the shaman could. Some of the people from the other tribes started to ask the Drumming tribe and Rain tribe about merging their fire seeds. Gigu knocked on the table with his knuckles. The people who were discussing stopped talking and looked at him. There are 2 things that I need everyone to prepare for, Gigu said. What are they? Someone asked. Gigu thought about what he had discussed with Xiao Xian and said, before winter, there will be a hunt. If any of the tribes that have merged their fire seeds and want to follow the Yanjiao into the forest to hunt, you can come to the Flaming River trading point. Gigu's words made many people's eyes light up. Hunt? Really? Are we going into the forest with fearsome beasts? Lu Zhai's breathing quickened. Just thinking about it made his blood boil. He couldn't wait. We, the Water Tiger tribe, will definitely come. The Water Tiger tribe's chief cheered up again. His bad mood after losing to Gongqie was instantly lifted. In some ways, the Water Tiger tribesmen were a little thick-skinned. If they lost, they lost. They would admit defeat, but they wouldn't say things like that. Xiao Xian didn't think they would do anything behind his back. Of course, it would take time to prove what kind of people these tribes were. Some of the tribes said that if the merging of their fire seeds went smoothly, they would send people over as training. They also had to prepare food for winter. According to Yan Jiao's rules, the Yan Jiao would bring them into the forest to hunt. They would have to hand over a portion of what they hunted and could only keep half of what they hunted. When the time came, they could choose to bring the hunted back to their tribe or trade it for other things at the trading point. Knowing that the trading point would be open for winter, some tribesmen who relied on their skills for survival became excited. They wouldn't come out during winter, but before winter, they could trade at the trading point. They could make the most of what they had and maximize the value of what they had. Other than hunting, there's one more thing. After a pause, Gigu continued, Yan Jiao will be expanding the trading point. Those who want to participate in this expansion can look for Elder Zhang Luo after the meeting. Expansion? The Flaming River trading point is already so big. Why does it still need to be expanded? Someone was surprised. It's not enough. There will be more people joining the Great Alliance in the future. Yan Jiao plans to build a trading point at the Stone Forest too, Gigu said. The meeting lasted for 2 days. Most of the time, they were discussing the merging of their fire seeds. When the meeting ended and the Beast Fong Gate opened again, all the tribes walked out one after another. This time, the atmosphere was much calmer than when they first entered. Although there were still people who fought over who came out first, it was much gentler. They didn't start fighting like when they first arrived. After learning about the merging of their fire seeds, they didn't stay in Yanjiao for long. Some left the day after leaving the Flaming River Castle, while others left on the second or third day. The good news was that these people had already started to work together. According to the water system, it was safer for tribes who were in the same water system to travel together. The tribes that gathered at the trading point left very quickly. The lively trading point suddenly became quiet. Although it was usually like this, with the hustle and bustle of the Great Alliance meeting, the trading point now looked very quiet. It'll be lively again very soon, Xiaoxian said as he stood on the roof of the Flaming River Tower and looked ahead. After a period of time, Xiaoxian could always feel the ripples of the fire seed's energy. Even though the ripples were very far away from the Flaming River trading point and other people couldn't sense it, Xiaoxian could still feel it. He could even tell which tribe had successfully merged their fire seeds based on the aura of the fire seeds. At first, there were only a few places where the ripples of the fire seed's energy could be felt. As the days passed, the ripples of the fire seed's energy became more frequent. Sometimes, Xiaoxian could feel 3 or 4 places a day. When all the tribes that responded to the summons had successfully merged their fire seeds, Xiaoxian looked at the weather that was starting to turn cold. He told everyone in the trading point to be careful. The trading point would be lively again in the coming days. As the leader of the Great Alliance, Yan Jiao wouldn't eat all the meat and leave the others with nothing to drink. That was why they brought people out to hunt before winter. They also wouldn't bring these people to every hunting route. Instead, they chose one route as a trial. These tribes either wanted to use this hunt as a form of training, or they wanted to hunt for more food to survive the winter. As for the Flaming Horn tribe, they wanted to use this hunt to understand the behavior and character of these tribes. Soon, teams arrived at the Flaming River trading point one by one. Compared to the last time, there were many unfamiliar faces in the teams this time. However, their overall strength was on the stronger side. They should be the elites of those tribes. It was obvious that if they went into the forest to hunt fearsome beasts, they would only be courting death. Ta's hunting team had already entered the forest to hunt. When they returned, it was time for the Great Alliance's team to set off. Because Yan Jiao was bringing these people out to hunt, Xiaoxian and the other Yanjiao people's main mission was to protect these people and prevent them from dying in the forest. Their main focus wasn't on hunting. That was why, in order to maintain the tribe's livelihood and the operation of the trading point, Ta would bring his team out to hunt first and prepare enough food for daily consumption. When most of the tribes had arrived, Ta's team also returned. Tell those tribes to prepare to cross the river and hunt. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.